Chapter 3178. Sura Qiantua. Sura Qiantua. More and more Sura Shura rushed out of the abyss and descended into the middle realm. They looked at the second Sura Shura commander as they shouted loudly. This Sura Shura commander called Sura Qiantua was even more terrifying. His body was 4 times larger than Mount Meru. His shoulders were extremely broad, and there were 1,000 heads on them. They waved 2,000 large hands, making one's scalp tingle. The 1,000 heads on Sura Qiantua's back looked up at the sky and roared in the direction of the heavenly courts. His voice was like thunder, and demonic flames surged into the sky. The sea of stars that surged from mystic heaven gradually calmed down under the roar of this Sura Shura commander. Another figure descended from the abyss. Paya! Paya! Many Sura Shura clansmen shouted when they saw this figure. The third of the 4 Sura Shura commanders, Paya. Paya looked the most similar to the Sura Shura. He had 3 heads and 6 arms. His 3 faces were greenish-black, and his body was covered in muscles that shone with a metallic luster. He held the sun and moon in his hands. His body was abnormally muscular and his aura was valiant. Immediately after, the last Sura Shura commander descended. Rahu! Rahu! The Sura Shura clansmen shouted again. This Sura Rahu commander looked much smaller than the previous 3 commanders. He had a human body and a dragon tail. He only had 4 arms, but his entire body exuded an extremely dangerous aura. Countless Sura Shura hornets swarmed out of the abyss. Under the lead of the 4 commanders, they faced off against the heavenly court's army that descended from the sky. Instantly, the terrifying pressure brought by the heavenly courts was shattered. The 4 Sura Shura commanders were all filled with fighting spirit. Their auras were terrifying. Even if they faced off against the heavenly court's inspector heavenly ambassadors, the outcome would probably be difficult to predict. The fear of the 3,000 realms towards the celestial tribute world had long been ingrained in their memories. Furthermore, they were facing the heavenly courts that backed the celestial tribute world. Only the Shura people from the Shura realm, who were brave and fierce, good at fighting, and had a natural hatred for the heavenly court, could confront them and not be at a disadvantage in terms of momentum. This group of Ashura clansmen had been lying dormant in Ashura for an entire era, all for today. In the distant starry sky, a white-browed old monk with a hunched back and a withered face slowly walked over. At first glance, he was still at the end of the starry sky. In the blink of an eye, he was already close by. A vast expanse of Shura people knelt down and kowtowed. Even the 4 commanders had to bow in front of the white-browed old monk with respectful expressions. "Greetings, my lord." Many Shura people shouted at the same time. The experts of the 3,000 realms were shocked. Could it be that this white-browed old monk was the legendary Demon Lord? An extremely strange feeling arose in the hearts of all the experts. The legendary Demon Lord ruled over billions of fierce and warlike Ashura clansmen, including the 4 commanders of Ashura clansmen. However, compared to the 4 commanders, this white-browed old monk looked too weak. He did not have the demeanor of a Demon Lord at all. If the Ashura clansmen had not knelt down and the 4 commanders had not bowed their heads, who would believe that such a dying old man would be the Demon Lord who had stirred up storms, commanded heaven and earth, spanned across many eras, and attacked the heavens several times? Such an old man could command billions of Ashura clansmen? When the group of heavenly court's imperial emperors had just descended into the middle realm, their expressions were still arrogant. They did not put the myriad races of the middle realm in their eyes at all. However, when the 4 commanders of Ashura clansmen rushed out of the abyss, the expressions of the heavenly court's imperial emperors changed. When they saw the white-browed old monk appear, the expressions of the heavenly court's imperial emperors became even more solemn and vigilant. "Demon Lord, how have you been?" A gentle voice came from the heavenly courts. In the crack in the heavens, the figure of a green-robed man appeared. He stepped on the void and slowly walked down as though there were stairs beneath his feet. The Lord of Heavens had arrived. At the same time, a black-robed man descended from the crack in the heavens. His expression was grim and his eyes were as deep as the sea as he stared at the white-browed old monk below. The Lord of Heavens had arrived. When the 2 lords of the heavenly courts descended, the momentum of heaven and earth reversed once again. Suddenly, a gigantic tombstone appeared beneath the white-browed old monk. There was not a single word on it. Hee. The white-browed old monk sat on the blank tombstone and suddenly laughed. Immediately after, under countless gazes, a large amount of dense pitch-black hair suddenly grew on the white-browed old monk's bald head. His white eyebrows fell off. An enormous life force suddenly burst forth from within his body. His face that was filled with wrinkles was no longer old. His eyes were no longer turbid. They were as clear as water and his gaze was as sharp as a knife. His back was no longer hunched and was as straight as a spear. Endless black gas coiled around the demon lord's body, condensing into a pitch-black armor. His aura skyrocketed. This was no longer the old man who had one foot in the grave. Right now, the black-armored man who sat on the tombstone with a cold expression and a murderous aura was the legendary demon lord who ruled over billions of Shura beings. It was only at this moment that the beings of the 3,000 worlds truly realized that the great battle between heaven and earth was about to erupt. Similar to the previous epics, the battlefield of this battle was still in the middle world. However, there was something different from the past. In this generation, two Thearchs were born in the middle world. Immediately after, the armies of White Sky and Yen Sky descended. The Lord of White Sky descended as well. Although the Yen Sky army was gathered and had a large number of people, their aura was much weaker compared to White Sky and Blue Sky. Not only was there no Lord of Yen Sky, there was no young Master Yen Sky as well. Even the Inspector Heavenly Ambassador Yen Sky was killed by Wu Dao's true body. When the Yen Sky army descended, it was chaotic and they were like dragons without a leader. Another abyss tore open in the cosmos. Countless living beings rushed out from it. There were all sorts of races, humans, dragons, foxes, protoss. It was extremely chaotic. The only similarity between those living beings was that their eyes were red and they had crazed expressions without any rationality, as though they wanted to tear everything around them apart. Fufufu. A series of strange sounds came from the mouths of those living beings. The gaze of Wu Dao's true body shifted as he saw a familiar figure among that group of living beings. It was the Peak Emperor Lord from Yen Sky who chased after him after he broke the Rakshasa Sind land back then. At that time, both of them were dragged into the dream realm by the evil emperor. However, he passed the test of the evil emperor and woke up from the dream realm. As for the Emperor Lord from Yen Sky, he was immersed in the dream realm and had fallen into the beast path, becoming one of those beasts that only knew how to bite. The little girl suddenly appeared. She came from the distant cosmos on a river of stars. The gaze of Wu Dao's true body landed on her. Initially, Asya was still that pale and frail little girl, exactly the same as what he saw in the dream realm. However, when he got closer, the little girl had already grown into a young girl of 17 or 18 years old. She was still frail and expressionless. One could vaguely see her childhood appearance on her face. Chapter 3179. When the young girl arrived in front of the red-eyed beasts, the beasts immediately stopped biting and looked at the young girl with a fawning expression. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that this seemingly harmless young girl was the evil emperor who ruled over billions of crazy beasts? The martial Dao body looked at the demon master and the evil emperor, deep in thought. The evil emperor and the fiend lord had changed quite a bit. The fiend lord was no longer old. The evil emperor had grown up as well. However, this state did not seem to be the evil emperor's normal state. Otherwise, there was no need for the two of them to turn into old and young people. In other words, something huge had happened to the two of them, causing one of them to look old and senile while the other looked like a child. The Fiend Lord had once revealed that they came from the major world. Perhaps the Fiend Lord and the evil emperor were severely injured in the major world and fell, resulting in their current state. The main reason why the Fiend Lord and the evil emperor wanted to conquer the heavens was to return to the major world. The injuries that the Fiend Lord and the evil emperor suffered could not be healed in the middle world? Looking at their states, it should be like the final radiance of the setting sun. They would not be able to hold on for long before they returned to their old and young appearances. Just as Wu Dao's main body was pondering, Min Tian in the northeast, Yu Tian in the northwest, Zhu Tian in the southwest, Yang Tian in the southeast and the Great Sky Army in the center had already descended into the middle world. The 8 masters of the heavenly courts had also descended. Boom! A third abyss split open in the starry skies. Countless winged Rakshasas and Yakshas flew out of the abyss with ferocious expressions and ferocious gazes, emitting a violent aura. The 10 Rakshasas that Wu Dao's main body had seen in the hungry ghost realm appeared one after another. Binding Rakshasas, holding a sutra in his left hand and a sword in his right. Separating Rakshasas, holding golden symbols with both hands. Shurji Rakshasas, holding flower cages. There were also black Rakshasas, beheaded Rakshasas, non-existent Rakshasas, seizing Rakshasas, Suwa Rakshasas and plain Rakshasas. The 10 Rakshasas were all peak imperial lords. The 9 Abyss Emperor was once the plain maiden Rakshasa of the 10 Rakshasas. Other than the 10 Rakshasas there were also the 8 Yakshas. Baoxian Yiksha, Manxian Yiksha, Sanji Yiksha, Majestic Yiksha, Inyan Yiksha, Daiman Yiksha, Herculean Yiksha, and Mayan Yiksha. The 8 Yikshas were all peak imperial emperors and had their own strengths. They were all extremely strong and ferocious. Behind the 10 Rakshasas and 8 Yakshas, a large amount of black fog surged from the end of the starry sky. In the boundless black fog, the figure of an old woman was faintly discernible. When the black fog came close, all of it entered the old woman's mouth. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the old woman's face glowed, and she turned into a beautiful woman in a black robe, exuding a mature and charming aura. The Brahma Ghost Mother had arrived. At this point, the 8 lords of the celestial court had appeared. On the 6 paths side, the master of the ghost path, the master of the ghost path, the master of the Ashura path, the master of the demon path, and the master of the beast path, the evil monarch had all arrived. Including Wu Dao himself and Dai Yu in the middle worlds, there were only 5 great monarchs in the Heaven Punisher's camp, which was still less than the 8 great monarchs in the Heaven Court. Hee hee. Brahma Ghost Mother's beautiful eyes glanced at Martial Dao True Body and Dai Yu. She suddenly smiled and said, "If the 2 of you had been merciful just now, maybe Fengdu could have taken the final step and killed the 3 corpses to prove their Dao. Then our chances of victory would have increased." The Brahma Ghost Mother's words were polite, but she was still unhappy with Wu Dao and Dai Yu. However, she also knew that the Heaven Punisher's war was imminent and Fengdu was already dead. There was no need to become enemies with Wu Dao and Dai Yu because of this. Suddenly, Wu Dao and Dai Yu frowned at the same time, and their expressions turned cold. Shura's army rushed out of the abyss. Under the deterrence of the Fiend Lord and Evil Emperor, they were well disciplined and didn't act rashly. However, after the Rakshasa and Yaksha armies rushed out of the abyss and arrived in the middle worlds, they didn't stay idle. The eyes of the Yakshas shone with a bloodthirsty light. They moved and rushed towards the planets and realms where the living beings of the 10,000 races lived. They were full of killing intent. The Rakshasa and Yaksha races were naturally cruel and bloodthirsty. Moreover, in the past few eras of the Heaven Punisher's war, the first thing they faced when they arrived in the middle worlds was the 3,000 worlds that were forced to participate in the war under the temptation of the Heaven Court. Therefore, the Rakshasa and Yaksha races left the world of spirits and souls and arrived here, ready to kill. No one in the nearby planets and realms could stop the slaughter of the Rakshasa and Yaksha races. Not only Wu Dao and Dai Yu, but the Brahma Ghost Mother also noticed this scene. However, she ignored it and didn't intend to stop it. She was still talking to Wu Dao and Dai Yu. Dai Yu's expression was indifferent. She suddenly said, "You'd better control your people. If you can't control them, I'll help you." "What did you say?" The Brahma Ghost Mother raised her eyebrows and narrowed her eyes. She looked at Dai Yu with hostility and asked slowly, "Are you threatening me?" While Dai Yu was talking, Wu Dao's main body had been watching the Devil Master and guarding against him. Wu Dao's main body believed that the evil emperor wouldn't allow his beast army to kill the innocent. However, he didn't know what the Devil Master would do. The 2 of them had the same goal, which was to conquer the Heaven Court. The Devil Master wanted to rope him in or use him to conquer the Heaven Court. If he wanted to defeat the Heaven Court, he would need the Devil Master and the Evil Emperor's power. Because of this, the 2 of them could temporarily cooperate. However, the cooperation between the 2 of them wasn't strong. After all, their Daos were different. The Brahma Ghost Mother didn't intend to stop the Rakshasa and Yaksha races. She just stared at Dai Yu and said faintly, "You'd better think carefully about who you are talking to." Dai Yu's tone just now made her furious. This blood butterfly of the middle realm had suppressed Fengdu in front of them. For the sake of the big picture, she could only endure it. However, this blood butterfly dared to talk to her like this? Even in the Great Thousand Worlds, how many people dared to threaten her? Even if she recovered 1/10 of her peak strength, killing this blood butterfly would be as easy as crushing an ant. Boom. Seeing that the group of Rakshasa and Yaksha races were about to reach the nearby planet, Dai Yu didn't waste time talking nonsense with the Brahma Ghost Mother and directly attacked. "How dare you?" The Brahma Ghost Mother was stunned. She didn't expect that when the 8 lords of the Heaven Court had arrived and were about to conquer the Heaven Court, this blood butterfly monarch still wanted to attack her for a few ants on a planet. Boom. The 2 sides collided in midair and a loud explosion erupted. Chapter 3180. Among the 10 Rakshasa female emperors, the pure maiden Rakshasa was at the front. Among the 8 Yakshas, Mayan Yaksha had already descended on a planet. His eyes shone and sticky saliva flowed from the gaps between his sharp fangs. The cultivators and living beings on this planet were way too weak in his eyes. They were lambs waiting to be slaughtered and were his food. As for the Yiksha race, they loved to eat humans the most. Boom. Right then, a deafening bang sounded from above, causing Mayan Yiksha to shudder. Immediately after, a huge shadow shrouded over. The power was so strong that even before it struck Mayan Yiksha's body, his body could not withstand it and his bones creaked as though they were about to fall apart. What's that? Mayan Yiksha was shocked. Even if he supported a world, he might not be able to defend against that power. Mayan Yiksha did not have time to think. In fact, he did not even dare to look up as he channeled his bloodline and released his innate secret skill, escaping into the void and escaping from this place. Even if the battlefield was shattered, as a void Yiksha, he could escape into the void at any time and leave the battlefield. However, as soon as his figure entered the void, he felt a huge vibration. There was a loud rumble. Mayan Yiksha was jolted out of the void by a boundless power. His armor was shattered and his body was covered in wounds with a blood mist shrouding him. Just this impact alone had almost shattered him. At that moment, Mayan Yiksha finally saw what had jolted him out of the void. It was a tall and heavy stone door that was ancient and mysterious. A pitch-black vortex appeared in the middle of the door and burst forth with an unstoppable suction force that wanted to pull him in. Mayan Yiksha supported a world and circulated his bloodline to the maximum to resist with all his might. However, countless pale palms reached out from the dark vortex and dragged him into the ancient door. The endless abyss. Ah! Accompanied by a tragic cry, Mayan Yiksha was devoured by the gate of hell and vanished. At the same time, the gate of hell descended and killed the pure maiden Rakshasa on the other side. While Dai Yu and Brahma Ghost Mother were fighting, Wu Dao's true body made his move decisively. 2 doors descended and killed the 2 peak imperial emperors of the ghost world. The rest of the Rakshasa race and Yiksha race were shocked and their expressions changed drastically. Araki Takashi. Seeing this, the Brahma Ghost Mother was enraged. She screamed and a large amount of black fog appeared behind her. However, Dai Yu had reached the Middle Thousand Realm and perfected the Great Wasteland domain. Her Taoist seal had solidified. In the battlefield of the Middle Thousand Realm, even if Brahma Ghost Mother was furious, it would be difficult for her to gain the upper hand. Seeing this, the rest of the Rakshasa and Yiksha tribes did not dare to act recklessly. The Nirvana Ghost Mother was busy with the Blood Butterfly Great Empress, and the Demon Lord and Evil Monarch were standing on the side, clearly not intending to help. The only one left was the Araki Takashi Great Emperor, who could easily kill them. In their eyes, the tens of thousands of living beings in the middle world were like ants. However, in the eyes of the Araki Takashi Great Emperor, how could their lives not be ants? The 8 lords of the heavenly courts looked down at the scene below them. They exchanged glances with each other, and a smile appeared in their eyes. They were naturally happy to see this situation. It was best if the 2 great emperors of the middle world fought with the Demon Lord, Evil Monarch and Brahma Ghost Mother. They could then sit back and reap the benefits. Demon Lord. Brahma Ghost Mother's face darkened. While fighting Dai Yu, she shouted, "Are you going to stay out of this? Are you going to watch Araki Takashi kill my people?" Brahma Ghost Mother did not complain to the Evil Monarch at all. She knew that the Evil Monarch would not help her. The Demon Lord was expressionless. He said calmly, "Ghost Mother, stop. The big picture is more important." "What big picture?" Brahma Ghost Mother screamed. "What kind of status do we have? Even if we are in the middle world, it will not be their turn to ride on our heads. If we want to join forces to conquer the heavens, we have to show our sincerity. What's wrong with my hungry ghosts eating some human flesh? Is it worth it for them to fight?" The Demon Lord looked at Brahma Ghost Mother and said slowly, "He is already very sincere. If not, none of your hungry ghost leaders would be alive." Brahma Ghost Mother's heart trembled. She knew that the Demon Lord was right. She was entangled with Blood Butterfly Great Emperor and could not escape. If Araki Takashi wanted to start a massacre, the 10 Rakshasas and the 8 Yikshas would most likely die. The Demon Lord's tone became heavier. "Conquering the heavens is the most important thing. Do not complicate matters." Brahma Ghost Mother's mind turned. She gradually calmed down and retreated. Dai Yu did not pursue. She knew when to stop. At least for now, they all had the same goal, the heavenly court. The battle between the 2 sides did not escalate due to the Demon Lord's intervention. Seeing this, a trace of disappointment flashed across the eyes of the 8 heavenly court lords. The great Sky Lord looked around and exuded boundless pressure. He said slowly, "Demons are wreaking havoc in the world. All living beings should join forces to kill them. Those who go against the heavens are the same as the demons. This sentence was not only for Wu Dao's main body and Daiyu, but also for the 3,000 worlds. The heavenly court was pressuring the 3,000 worlds. At the very least, they could not let the 3,000 worlds side with the 6 paths. In fact, the existence of the heavenly court was a huge deterrent to the 3,000 worlds. Firstly, the majority of cultivators could not tell whether it was the demons wreaking havoc in the world or the heavenly court's tyranny. Although the people of the 3,000 worlds were more willing to believe in the emperors of Old's Choice and Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Blood Butterfly's words. However, in the face of the heavenly court's pressure, the majority of the worlds did not dare to express their opinions. Secondly, since ancient times, the heavenly court had always been the victor in the war of conquering the heavens. Moreover, it seemed that the heavenly court still had the absolute advantage in the number of great emperors. After the war of conquering the heavens ended, the heavenly court would start to settle the score. At this time, if they were to join forces with Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Blood Butterfly in the war of conquering the heavens, they would be the target of the heavenly court's revenge. Many worlds could not bear such consequences. But now they were unable to help the heavenly court kill the demons and fight against Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Blood Butterfly, 2 middle world great emperors. All the people of the 3,000 worlds saw clearly that the Lord of the Underworld buried the heavens and sacrificed all living beings. The heavenly court did not care about them and the demons did not care about them. Only Great Emperor Araki Takashi stepped forward bravely. He even risked his injured body to fight against the 2 great emperors, the White Sky Lord and the Lord of the Underworld. If it wasn't for that, the 3,000 worlds would have been covered in desolation a long time ago. The living beings in the 3,000 worlds were in a terrible situation, and countless living beings had been buried. Of course, the Heaven Wasteland Domain, the Sword Domain, the Dragon Domain, the Great Wasteland Domain, the Blood Ape Domain, and the Kunping Domain had already fought with the Heavenly Court. There was no way out. The Elder Ape, Emperor Kuan of the North, the Frost Dragon Emperor, and the Lord of the Flower Domain were all ready to attack the heavens together. This was a difficult choice for them. If they won, they would naturally ascend to the greater 1,000 worlds. The world they were in would also welcome the greatest opportunity and stand tall in the 3,000 worlds. If they lost, everything would be over. Chapter 3181. Heaven and Earth confronted each other. The auras of the 8 heavenly court's masters surged. Wu Dao's original body, the Moon Butterfly Demon Master, the Evil the Arch, and the other 5 great thearchs also circulated their divine senses to resist. Boom! The auras of the great thearchs collided in the center of heaven and earth, exploding with a loud bang. The entire sea of stars instantly boiled. Countless voids were torn apart and a large number of dense cracks appeared. Black holes appeared beside the great thearchs. However, these black holes were unable to devour them at all. Just the clash of auras between the great thearchs caused such a terrifying scene. Everyone, there's no need to go forward. Wu Dao's original body's voice sounded in the minds of the old ape with the Iron Crown, the Frost Dragon Emperor, and the others. This world war was very likely to surpass every war of the heavens in the past. It would erupt with an unprecedentedly terrifying scene. Just the residual power of the battle between the great thearchs was enough to kill many living beings. Even if a peak imperial emperor accidentally got involved, it would be difficult for them to survive. You guys wait first. At the same time, the 8 heavenly court's masters also transmitted their divine senses to the heavenly court's army behind them. The key to this world war was still the battle between the 13 great thearchs. The 8 heavenly court's masters had absolute confidence. They were also experts who stood at the peak of the great 1,000 worlds. If not, they would not have been appointed to establish the 9 heavens, build the heavenly courts and suppress the middle world. Although there were restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth in the middle world, their combat power was limited to this level. However, it was the same for the Demon Master, the Evil the Arch, and the others. The only variable was none other than the great thearchs of the middle world. After all, this was a middle world. That Blood Butterfly had reached the middle world, so her combat power was naturally stronger. Even so, having 2 lords of the heavenly court against her was enough. The remaining great the Arch, Araki Takashi, was nothing to be afraid of. The 13 great thearchs stood in the starry sky, facing each other. The atmosphere was heavy, almost reaching the limit. Heaven and earth was filled with a heart-palpitating murderous aura. A great battle was about to erupt. All the beings of the myriad races were as silent as cicadas in winter as they stared unblinkingly at this world-shaking battle of unparalleled proportions. After an unknown period of time. Kill? A voice suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. This voice instantly ignited the flames of war. The great Sky Lord went to find the Devil Master. Among the 8 lords of the celestial courts, their battle prowess was about the same. The great Heaven Lord's battle prowess was considered slightly better. The Devil Master was facing off against the strongest of the 8 lords of the celestial court. This could be considered as relieving some of the pressure on the others. Sun Sky Lord against Ghost Mother Brahma. The Master of Vermilion Heaven against the Evil Emperor. The Master of Dim Heaven and Dim Heaven went straight to Dayu. The 8 Heaven Court Lords had already decided that 2 of them would fight against Blood Butterfly Monarch. At the very least, Blood Butterfly Monarch would not be able to cause any trouble. Only the Master of Firmament, the Master of Black Heaven, and the Master of White Heaven were left. Meanwhile, the 3 martial monarchs were heading straight for Wu Dao. Among the 5 great monarchs below, the Demon Master, the Evil Monarch, and the Nirvana Ghost Mother were both from the Great Thousand Worlds. They were once equally famous as the great monarchs. It would be difficult to suppress them in a short time. As for the Blood Butterfly Great Emperor, she had reached the Middle Thousand Realm and her battle prowess was unparalleled in the Middle Thousand Realm. Among the 5, the biggest weakness was Araki Takashi. What's more, White Heaven and Black Heaven had already formed a grudge with Araki Takashi. They could use this opportunity to settle the blood debt from before. As long as the 3 martial monarchs joined forces and killed Araki Takashi in the shortest amount of time, they could then turn to deal with the other 4 martial monarchs. This way they would have the advantage of having twice the number of people and would definitely win this battle. The Heavenly Lord, White Heaven Lord, and Black Heaven Lord instantly surrounded Wu Dao's main body. They looked at Wu Dao's main body as if they were looking at a dead man. Araki Takashi, calling you a martial monarch is just a compliment. White Heaven Lord sneered coldly. Do you really think that you are a martial monarch and can stand shoulder to shoulder with us? Kill. The 3 of them did not give Wu Dao's main body any chance to escape. They split into 3 different directions and held up a world. At the same time they attacked Wu Dao's main body. On the other side. Seeing this scene, Ghost Mother Brahma was expressionless and unmoved. As for the Fiend Master, his eyes rippled. He could also tell what the heavenly courts were planning. If Araki Takashi died, their situation would definitely be extremely disadvantageous. Dayu frowned slightly and her eyes shone with a cold light. Her attacks became sharper as she wanted to break through the combined defense of Dark Heaven Lord and Dark Heaven Lord. However, Dark Heaven Lord and Dark Heaven Lord's methods were also extremely terrifying. The 2 worlds condensed with Dao seals withstood the resplendent blood-colored storm and were indestructible and unshakable. The 2 heavenly courts lords did not hold back at all. Their goal was to stall Blood Butterfly Martial Monarch and make her stay where she was. The evil emperor was expressionless, but a dazzling galaxy was suddenly reflected in his eyes. When Dark Heaven Lord saw that pair of eyes, he was slightly stunned. In a trance he seemed to have left the battlefield. The sounds of fighting, collisions and clashing of weapons suddenly disappeared. At that moment he was far away from the chaos and fighting. He laid alone in the boat with his hands behind his head and floated quietly on a clear lake. His eyes were closed as he drifted with the waves and his heart sank into an unprecedented calmness. His surroundings were peaceful and quiet. When night fell he opened his eyes and looked over, only to see a sky filled with stars. The resplendent galaxy hung in the horizon and was also reflected in the calm lake. Dark Heaven Lord felt as though he was in the depths of the galaxy. It was beautiful and ethereal, surreal and illusory. It was as though he had an extremely beautiful dream that he was intoxicated with and could not extricate himself from. All of a sudden, a furious roar interrupted his dream. Wake up, wake up. That was the voice of the great Heaven Lord. When Dark Heaven Lord heard that roar, endless frustration rose in his heart. Instead, he blamed the voice for disturbing his dream. However, he woke up very quickly and broke out in cold sweat. The Milky Way and the surface of the lake had already disappeared. Not good. Dark Heaven Lord was alarmed. Unfortunately, it was too late. After getting drunk, one doesn't know the sky and water. Suppressing the galaxy in a dream, the evil emperor's voice seemed distant yet close, as though it came from a distant dream and arrived in reality. The next moment, Dark Heaven Lord felt as though he was severely injured as he was tossed high into the air and flew out, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His body was on the verge of shattering and was extremely damaged. The world around him shook and was filled with cracks. He was merely distracted for a moment and fell into the galaxy dreamscape created by the evil emperor and was almost killed on the spot. This was a battle between emperors. The first to be severely injured was the master of the heavenly courts. If the evil emperor continued to pursue, there was a high chance that he could suppress the Dark Heaven Lord completely while the latter was severely injured. However, a hint of hesitation flashed through her eyes and she paused for a moment. If she continued to pursue the Dark Heaven Lord, Araki Takashi would most likely be doomed against the encirclement of 3 emperors on the other side. It would be too much of a pity if she gave up on the Dark Heaven Lord. At this moment, a calm voice suddenly sounded in her mind. "Don't worry about me. Suppress the Dark Heaven Lord with all your might." That was Araki Takashi's voice. The evil emperor's eyes lit up when she heard that. She did not know what methods Wu Dao's true body had. However, she chose to believe in Wu Dao's true body. She also believed that she would be able to suppress the Vermilion Heaven's master before helping the martial Dao body. Chapter 3182. The Vermilion Heaven Lord was severely injured. The only one who could save him was the Master of Blue Heaven, the Master of White Heaven, and the Master of Black Heaven, who were attacking Wu Dao's original body. The other Heavenly Court Lords were also held back by Daiyu, the Demon Master, and the Brahma Ghost Mother. However, the Master of Blue Heaven, the Master of White Heaven, and the Master of Black Heaven hesitated for a moment before viciousness flashed across their eyes. The 3 Heavenly Court Lords had a tacit understanding. They decided to kill Wu Dao's original body first. The 3 of them worked together without holding back. Araki Takashi definitely wouldn't be able to stop them. After suppressing Araki Takashi, the 3 of them turned around to deal with the evil emperor. This would be more effective for the situation. Moreover, the evil emperor couldn't kill the Vermilion Heaven Lord completely. To be precise, they couldn't kill each other completely. Over the years, only the Seamless Emperor from back then had come up with the idea of sacrificing himself to imprison 2 emperors. It could be considered another way to prevent the return of the Lord of Hell and the Lord of Flame Heaven. Boom. In the world of the 3, the Dao Seal shone with a blazing light. The heavenly Dao Seal, the sacred beast Azure Dragon, flew and spat out dragon breath. It merged with the Master of Blue Heaven's bloodline avatar and world. The White Heaven Dao Seal, the sacred beast White Tiger, controlled killing. It spat out platinum energy. Even a strand of hair from its body could destroy a world. The Xiantian Dao Seal, the tortoise and snake, coiled around each other. It stepped on the sea and roared at the sky, creating raging waves. The 3 Heavenly Court Lords attacked together, causing countless stars to explode. Heaven and earth shook and the sea of stars churned. It could be said to be apocalyptic. Many experts who saw this even suspected that even the Blood Butterfly Emperor wouldn't be able to withstand such a terrifying attack. Emperor Araki Takashi had almost died under the combined attacks of the Master of White Heaven and the Master of Hell. Now, how would he defend against the combined attacks of the 3 Heavenly Court Lords? At this moment, countless living beings' hearts were in their mouths. Boom. Suddenly, a loud sound came from Wu Dao's original body. This wasn't the sound of a bloodline avatar. It was more like a volcano eruption. It was as if a seal on his body was unlocked and another power was awakened. Wu Dao's original body exuded a terrifying aura. If it was only martial art of universe at the small stage martial art, Wu Dao's original body wouldn't be able to withstand the 3 Heavenly Court Lords. Now the war against the heavens. The 8 Lords of the Heavenly Court had already shown themselves, so there was no need for the martial Dao true body to hide anymore. Yuanwu World. Martial Heavens of Heaven World was martial of heaven and earth had of heaven. But before that, he had to use this period of time to support the Yuanwu world to completely establish the victory of this generation's War of the Heavens. Ever since he cultivated the Yuanwu world, his martial Dao true body had never released it. God of White Heaven, Master of White Heaven and Black Heaven. The 3 Masters of the Heaven clearly sensed that something had happened to Wu Dao's true body. And this change actually caused the 3 of them to feel a sense of trepidation. White Sky Master had seen methods like Martial Refining Universe, Heaven and Earth Furnace, and 10 Gates of Hell. At this moment, Wu Dao's figure became faintly discernible. A dark and mysterious world appeared in his body and spread continuously. This is a second world? How is this possible? The 3 Lords of the Heavenly Courts were puzzled by this scene. They came from the Great Thousand World, but even with their knowledge they could not understand the scene in front of them. The only thing the 3 Celestial Lords were sure of was that as this dark and mysterious world spread, the sense of danger they felt grew stronger and stronger. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 Lords of the Heavenly Courts attacked even more ferociously. They wanted to suppress Wu Dao's true body in the shortest time possible. At the very least, he could not allow Wu Dao's true body to continue releasing this secret technique. The 10 gates of hell shattered under the attacks of the 3 lords of the heavenly courts. The heaven and earth furnace was also shattered by the 3 lords of the heavenly courts. However, the existence of the 10 gates of hell and the heaven and earth furnace helped Wu Dao's true body delay for a moment. This was enough for him. Martial refining universe. The Yuanwu world reached a miraculous state of equilibrium on Wu Dao's true body and produced a resonance. These were 2 different Dao techniques. Martial refining universe was a world that was completely based on Wu Dao's cultivation. The Yuanwu world, on the other hand, was constantly evolving from the anomaly that was Wu Dao's true body. The existence of Wu Dao's true body jumped out of the 3 realms and did not belong to the 5 elements. The Yuanwu grotto heaven that was created was the same. The Yuanwu world made Wu Dao's true body the greatest variable. This was not only the fusion and resonance of the 2 Dao techniques, but also the fusion of Wu Dao's Dao and the anomaly's true body. It would give birth to endless variables and possibilities. At the same time, Wu Dao's true body once again felt a sense of danger that made his heart palpitate. And this time it was even clearer. It was like a sharp sword hanging high above his head that could slash down at any moment. Furthermore, Wu Dao's true body knew that if this sword slashed down, he would not be able to block it. Wu Dao's true body did his best to suppress this feeling of fear and locked his gaze on the 3 lords of the heavenly courts. Whoosh! Wu Dao's true body took a deep breath and a huge amount of air flowed into his lungs, producing a hissing sound. His chest puffed up high and he threw 3 punches in the direction of the 3 lords of the heavenly courts. Boom, boom, boom. 3 consecutive deafening explosions rang out. The 4 of them maintained this posture, not moving at all. At this moment, it was as if time had frozen. Even the other great emperors who were engaged in a fierce battle felt the surrounding space tremble at that moment. They glanced over instinctively. The 3 lords of the heavenly courts were stunned for a moment. Immediately after, their eyes were filled with immense shock. The 3 punches of Wu Dao's true body released a mighty and shocking divine power that was unstoppable and could destroy everything. Splash! The bloodline phenomenons of the 3 lords of the heavenly courts shattered completely. Crack, crack, crack. The world created by the 3 lords of the heavenly courts also let out a series of shuddering sounds as dense cracks appeared. The brilliance of their Dao seals flickered and flickered continuously. Even with the 3 bloodline phenomenons and worlds that were fused with their Dao seals, the 3 lords of the heavenly courts could not defend against it. The shocking divine power released by the 3 punches surged into their bodies through their bloodline phenomenons and worlds, destroying their life force. Exclamation point. The 3 lords of the heavenly courts spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their faces were pale as they were sent flying by Wu Dao's true body's 3 punches. The scene caused an uproar among the crowd. The other emperor immortals who were fighting turned pale with fright. This result was beyond everyone's expectations. The expressions of the emperors of the heavenly courts instantly turned extremely ugly. The 3 lords of the heavenly courts joined forces to besiege a human who had not attained the Dao yet, but they were defeated? When the 3 lords of the heavenly courts joined forces, even if the Emperor Wuji came back from the dead, he would definitely not be able to stop them. Who exactly was this Emperor Araki Takashi? Chapter 3183. When Dayu saw this, she finally relaxed and fought the 2 thearchs with all her might. Her aura grew stronger as she fought. When the Fiend Master and Brahma Ghost Mother saw this, they were shocked. They were no weaker than the Heavenly Court's masters. They came from the greater world and were far above thearchs. However, they were in a middle world and were restricted by the laws of heaven and earth. Their combat strength was limited and they could only unleash the strength of the arch. Therefore, their combat strength in the middle world was not much different. The laws of heaven and earth originated from the birth of heaven and earth. It was a law that protected the existence of the 3 realms. If experts from the upper world came to the lower world and could release their strength as they wished, the lower world would be destroyed countless times and the stability of the 3 realms would be destroyed. Living beings from the middle world would also be restricted in a lesser world unless they cultivated above the arch realm. Even with their cultivation in the greater world, they could not resist the laws of heaven and earth. However, the power that the Arch Araki Takashi just released seemed to have broken through the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth. How was that possible? The Arch Araki Takashi was only at the Arch realm. How could such a change happen to him? Even the Fiend Master and Brahma Ghost Mother could not understand the situation just now. However, the 2 of them knew that if the Arch Araki Takashi could really break through the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, even if his strength increased by a single level, it would be enough to determine the victory of this war of the heavens. The Fiend Master and the others had fought for countless epochs and countless years but had always failed. Until this generation they finally saw a glimmer of hope. On the other side, the Vermilion Heaven Master lost the initiative and was struck by the nefarious Emperor's Galaxy Dream Realm. He was severely injured and wanted to retreat from the battlefield to heal. However, the nefarious Emperor chased after him like a shadow and did not give him the chance. Screech. Seeing that the situation was bad, the Vermilion Heaven Master screamed and let out a sharp phoenix cry. Poof. The Vermilion Heaven Master bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood in front of him. Every drop of essence blood transformed into a scarlet vermilion bird. They flapped their wings and emitted scorching heat as they charged towards the nefarious Emperor. Although the Vermilion Heaven Master was not a true vermilion bird, his body had an extremely rich vermilion bird bloodline. Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword. At the same time, the Vermilion Heaven Master fused his Tao seal with his bloodline and a world appeared in his palm, forming a scarlet crystalline sword. As though it had just been pulled out of magma, it was incomparably hot and blazed with flames. Seeing that he couldn't escape, the Vermilion Heaven Master ignored his heavy injuries and charged at the evil Emperor with the Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword in his hand while surrounded by numerous vermilion birds. After all, he was the master of a heavenly court. Even if his battle prowess was limited to the level of a great emperor, he could still unleash many powerful trump cards with his extraordinary knowledge. The evil monarch was only empty-handed. His glabella flashed and ripples appeared in his eyes as he murmured, "My soul is exhausted and my dreams are shattered." The evil emperor's voice was soft and pure, as though he was a pure and innocent child. As this voice rang out, the Vermilion Heaven Master felt a wave of fatigue and drowsiness, causing him to fall asleep. The Vermilion Heaven Master's expression changed rapidly. The left side was extremely calm and serene, but the right side was abnormally hideous and in extreme pain. The Vermilion Heaven Master was struggling. He clearly knew that this was the demonic emperor's Tao technique. Furthermore, it was one of the demonic emperor's strongest methods. Soul is exhausted and my dreams are shattered. It could be used directly on the essence spirit and cause the other party to fall into a trance, as though they had fallen into a dream and their essence spirit would be damaged. However, his body was out of control and he wanted to fall into a deep sleep. If he was in his peak condition, he would definitely not be so passive. The combat prowess of the two of them was actually not much different. However, he was slightly careless and lost the initiative, causing him to be severely injured by the evil emperor, causing him to fall into the current dangerous situation. Exclamation point. The Vermilion Heaven Master suddenly turned the Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword and stabbed it towards his abdomen. He used all his strength and held nothing back in this attack. Instantly, his body was pierced and blood gushed out. The immense pain stimulated the Vermilion Heaven Master's mind and woke him up instantly. The entire process seemed long, but in reality, it happened in a trance. However, his essence spirit was already damaged in this trance and the many vermilion birds surrounding him dissipated one after another. Thankfully, he was already awake and was temporarily out of danger. However, right then the evil emperor pointed in his direction and murmured, "Iron Horse Glacier, rumble." Boom, boom. The sound of thousands of horses galloping over echoed in the Vermilion Heaven Master's mind, breaking through the glacier with a murderous aura. In the next moment, countless armored warhorses appeared before his eyes. Only a pair of cold eyes could be seen. Countless cavalrymen charged over with a menacing aura. The Vermilion Heaven Master let out a series of roars as he wielded the Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword with both hands and swung it around repeatedly. He could no longer tell if the scene before him was reality or a dream. Be it reality or a dream, he only wanted to cut through everything before him. However, when his Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword landed on the armored cavalry, it was as though he was slashing empty air. The Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword sliced through the armored cavalry without any obstruction. The Vermilion Heaven Master was slightly stunned and a hint of confusion flashed through his eyes. Bang! However, in the next moment, a horseman charged over and slammed heavily into him, sending him flying several dozen meters away. He fell into the distant starry sky. Intense pain. There was intense pain all over his body. However, the Vermilion Heaven Master could no longer tell if the intense pain was real or fake or if it was a dream. A figure hidden in the midst of the galloping cavalry suddenly appeared and struck out a palm at the top of his head. The Vermilion Heaven Master's eyes lit up and he instantly locked onto the opportunity of that figure. He shouted, "Die!" Swoosh! The Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword slashed out and cut through the bodies of countless armored cavalry. that figure disappeared. The Vermilion Heaven Master did not have time to think. He turned around abruptly and swung the heavenly vermilion sacred sword behind him. However, he was still one step too late. Bang! A palm landed on his back, neither light nor heavy. However, the Vermilion Heaven Master's body trembled as though his soul had left his body. He was in a daze and did not know where he was. Nank palm. The Vermilion Heaven Master recognized it. It was one of the evil emperor's most famous moves in the Great Thousand Worlds. The Nank palm's killing power was not strong. However, with every palm strike, a layer of dream would appear on his body. The more palms there were, the more dreams there would be. They would stack continuously until he was trapped in layers of dreams and could never extricate himself. Exclamation point. The Vermilion Heaven Master spat out another mouthful of blood. Reality and illusion, he could no longer distinguish between dream and reality. On the other side, the Great Heaven Master's expression turned grim when he saw that the situation was bad. If this dragged on, the Vermilion Heaven Master would most likely be suppressed by the evil emperor. Chapter 3184. When he saw how domineering Wu Dao's true body and the evil emperor were, the Fiend Lord's eyes shone with a cold glint and his killing intent surged. Suddenly, 3 tombs appeared behind the Fiend Lord. The appearance of the 3 tombs emitted a shuddering aura that even the world could not withstand and trembled slightly. Poof, poof, poof. The 3 tombs suddenly split open and a stream of scarlet blood flowed out like 3 blood springs. All of a sudden, 3 blood-stained swords flew out from the blood springs of the 3 tombs with chilling killing intent. The surrounding temperature plummeted and almost froze the starry skies. The killing intent of the 3 swords was way too intense. Even Wu Dao's true body frowned slightly and glanced sideways. Even the 3 sword arts that were extremely murderous were far inferior to the killing intent of the 3 swords. He truly did not know what was buried in the 3 tombs. Who was the blood of the 3 swords stained with? Slash. The Fiend Lord pointed forward with his spirit consciousness. One of the blood-stained swords sped over and transformed into a streak of blood light. Instantly, it arrived before the Great Heaven Lord with a torrential killing intent and blood chi. The Great Heaven Lord had a grim expression as he summoned a gigantic imperial jade seal that shone with an emerald green glow. Great Heaven Saint Seal. The Great Heaven Lord hollered and the bloodline phenomenon of a world, together with the Dao seal, fused into the gigantic imperial jade seal and smashed towards the incoming blood sword. Clang. The sound of metal clashing echoed. The blood-stained sword was suppressed by the Great Heaven Saint Seal right away. However, it struggled continuously as though it possessed boundless spirituality. Exterminate. The Fiend Lord's spirit consciousness moved. The blood-stained sword that flew out of the second tomb pierced towards the Great Heaven Lord. Slash. At the same time, the Fiend Lord waved his hand and the third blood-stained sword followed closely behind, slashing towards the Great Heaven Lord. Slash. Slash. The 3 blood swords shot out at the same time with torrential killing intent. At the same time, Brahma. The Brahma Ghost Mother shrieked and turned into a black mist, fusing into the world she created and vanishing without a trace. Brahma and I as one. Then, the Brahma Ghost Mother's voice rang out again. Nirvana Ghost Mother seemed to have disappeared, but she was everywhere. Sun Sky Master furrowed his brows and formed hand seals continuously. His entire being seemed to have transformed into a giant sun that stood between heaven and earth and shone brightly, illuminating the entire world. However, under the suppression of Brahma and self as one, the light around Sun Sky Master was constantly being compressed and devoured. On the other side, behind Daiyu, a gigantic blood-red butterfly appeared. 2 blood-red moons were imprinted on its wings. It was like a pair of blood-red eyes, staring at Lord Yu Tian and Lord Min Tian. The 2 blood-red moons contained a mysterious and powerful power. After locking onto the 2 masters of the heaven for a long time, they were actually able to dispel their Dao seals. After Wu Dao's main body and the evil emperor gained the upper hand, the Moon Butterfly Demon Master, Brahma Ghost Mother, and the other 2's momentum soared as they launched a full-scale counterattack. Under the gazes of many experts, the 8 great emperors of the heavenly court suffered heavy injuries one after another. They fell into a disadvantageous position and retreated step by step. Save them. Retreat. Lord Jun Tian's voice sounded in the minds of the heavenly court masters. Lord Zhu Tian was about to die. Lord Blue Sky, Lord White Sky, and Lord Black Sky were also heavily injured. The situation was critical. The remaining 4 couldn't gain the slightest advantage against Blood Butterfly Demon Master and Brahma Ghost Mother. If they continued to fight in the middle world, they would probably all die here. Retreating to the heavenly court and using the 9 heavens great array to block Emperor Araki Takashi and the others would buy them enough time to recover from their injuries. Once they recovered, they could use the 9 heavens great array's power to make a comeback. Perhaps they could still fight. Unstoppable thunderbolt. Lord Juntian's eyes shone with the light of lightning. He opened his arms and used a Dao technique, creating a dazzling sea of lightning between heaven and earth. The other masters of the heavenly court also released their life-saving methods. In an instant heaven and earth shook, and the clouds changed color. Lord Juntian, Lord Yutian, and the others pulled themselves out of the battlefield and rushed toward the heavenly court. Lord Juntian was trapped in a dream realm. Under the impact of countless thunderbolts, the dream realm he was in shattered one after another. However, the Lord Juntian was still in danger. Just now he was struck by multiple Nank palm strikes and there were too many dream realms stacked on his body. Even if the other masters of the heavenly courts made a move, they wouldn't be able to save him within a short period of time. Humph. The evil emperor was expressionless as he said coldly, "I'm going to kill this person today." An immortal boat appeared beneath her and streaked through the starry skies, entering the depths of the dream realm. Ripples appeared one after another as she arrived before the Lord Juntian. The appearance of the evil emperor was also an existence that broke through the dream realm and caused the Lord Juntian to notice something amiss. The Lord Juntian roared and counterattacked with the heavenly Zhu sacred sword once more, charging towards the evil emperor. However, in the eyes of the evil emperor, his resistance was merely the struggle of a trapped beast. After all, this was a dream realm created by the evil emperor. Even if the Lord Juntian discovered the existence of the evil emperor, he wouldn't be a match for the evil emperor in the layers of dream realms. Bang, bang, bang. The two of them intertwined and exchanged more than 100 blows in the blink of an eye. Streaks of blood appeared on the evil emperor's body as well. There was no way she could be unharmed when a master of the heavenly courts fought with his life on the line. A moment later, suddenly the two figures froze. The surrounding dream realms dissipated one after another. Countless streaks of blood appeared on the body of the Lord Juntian as well. Gradually he dissipated along with the surrounding dream realms, turning into a blood mist. The expressions of the Great Heaven Lord, Dark Heaven Lord and the others turned terrible when they saw that. They knew that the Lord Juntian could no longer be saved. At the same time, the Lords of Heavens, White Heaven and Black Heaven split into 3 different directions and fled towards the heavenly courts. Although Wu Dao's true body was strong, there was no way he could keep all 3 of them behind. Swash! In a flash, Wu Dao's true body took a single step forward and arrived behind White Heaven Lord instantly, smashing down with his fist. Sensing the danger behind him, White Heaven Lord summoned a treasure mirror that shone with a cold glint without hesitation. Augmented with a Dao seal, he blocked behind him. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The fist of Wu Dao's true body smashed heavily onto the treasure mirror. White Heaven Lord shuddered and spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered and nearly fell. Even with the protection of the treasure mirror, he could not withstand the fist of Wu Dao's true body. Impossible. White Heaven Lord was in an extremely wretched state as he shouted, "Your strength has already exceeded the limits of a medium-class realm. This is impossible." Boom. Wu Dao's true body did not say anything and followed up with a second punch. The sense of danger grew stronger and he was in no mood to bother about White Heaven Lord. Crack, crack, crack. Accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, the treasure mirror was shattered by Wu Dao's true body. White Heaven Lord's arm could not withstand the shocking divine power and was shattered inch by the second punch, bursting into a blood mist. Chapter 3185. When the Lord of Blue Skies and Lord of Black Heaven saw that, their expressions were filled with fear. White Sky Lord was most likely doomed and the two of them did not dare to turn back to save him. Otherwise, the two of them would be hammered to death by Emperor Araki Takashi as well. The moment that thought flashed through their minds, a tragic cry sounded from White Sky Lord's side. The third punch of Wu Dao's true body descended and split White Sky Lord's body into pieces. Swash! White Sky Lord's essence spirit broke through the blood mist and fled into the distance. However, Wu Dao's true body was prepared. There was a loud rumble. A gigantic ancient gate descended with a sinister aura, blocking White Sky Lord's escape route. Sensing that something was amiss, White Sky Lord retreated hurriedly. However, a gigantic pitch-black vortex appeared on the ancient gate. Surging with endless fiend chi, it burst forth with a massive suction force that wanted to pull him in. The gate of hell had descended. White Sky Lord's expression changed starkly as he realized the motive of Wu Dao's true body. A vicious glint flashed through his eyes and he wanted to self-destruct his essence spirit. However, the pitch-black fiend chi had already wrapped around him and seeped into his essence spirit, preventing him from self-destructing. Then, countless pale white hands reached out from the gloomy door and dragged him in. The other end of the gate of hell led to the Avicii Great Hell. It was the place where Blazing Sky Lord and Lord of Hell were imprisoned. According to the Fiend Lord, it was impossible to kill the lords of the heavenly courts completely. Even if they were beaten to a pulp, they would still come back to haunt them. In other words, imprisoning them in the Avicii Great Hell without killing them was the best way to deal with them. Before this, Wu Dao's true body wanted to imprison Fengdu in the Avicii Great Hell. Unfortunately, Fengdu sensed his motive in advance and chose to commit suicide. As for the 8 lords of the heavenly courts, they were far away in the heavenly courts and were high and mighty. They did not know the methods of Wu Dao's true body at all. By the time White Sky Lord reacted, it was already too late. When the Great Heaven Master and the others saw this, they realized that they couldn't save them. They decisively abandoned the White Heaven Master and the Zhu Heaven Master and led their armies back to the heavenly court. The huge cracks in the sky also closed up. After this battle, not only did the 8 lords of the heavenly court fail to kill Wu Dao Zun and the others, they even lost 2 great monarchs. The Vermilion Heaven Master has fallen? Dai Yu also saw the demonic emperor's attack and asked. The evil emperor shook his head slightly and said, "He is only temporarily dead. He will make a comeback." After pausing for a moment, the evil emperor continued, "However, even if he comes back from the dead, he won't be able to return to his peak state in a short period of time. He will need to recuperate for a very long time. This is the best chance for us to conquer the heavens." Of the original 9 lords of the heavenly courts, only 6 were left. On their side there were 5 martial monarchs. The Brahma Ghost Mother said, "Even if there are 6 monarchs left with the 9 heavens great formation, we won't be able to break through in a short time." "Not necessarily," the Fiend Master said as his gaze landed on Wu Dao's main body. Wu Dao's main body turned and looked in the direction of the celestial tribute world. The experts of the celestial tribute world felt a chill run down their spines. They never thought that the heavenly court would lose the war of heaven and earth in this life and leave them in the middle world. For countless years, they had been conscientious and vigilant, monitoring the 3,000 worlds for the heavenly court. They didn't even have the chance to step into the heavenly court and ascend to the greater world. They never thought that they would be abandoned so casually. Before the lords of the heavenly courts left, they didn't even look at them. Wu Dao's main body moved. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Gates of hell tore through the void and descended on the celestial tribute world, smashing down on the remaining 8 great sinners. The 8 great sinners called themselves Space and were indestructible. Back then, Wu Dao's main body had broken through the 9 underworld sinners with the help of the Brahma Ghost Mother's blood. Now, without the help of others, the 8 great sinners couldn't withstand the 10 gates of hell smashing down and shattering. The evil spirits that had been imprisoned here for generations finally saw the light of day in the era created by Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Xue Dai. The battle between the great emperors caused a huge commotion. Dao techniques interweaved in a dazzling and resplendent manner. Even the evil spirits within the 8 great sins could see it clearly. After they were freed, they were stunned for a long time and couldn't believe it. As time passed, they finally realized that they had regained their freedom. Billions of evil spirits cheered, their voices getting louder and louder. Among the cheers there were roars and cries. It was unknown who started it, but some people knelt down in the direction of the martial Dao body, their faces full of tears. Following that, a large number of evil spirits knelt on the ground and looked at the purple figure in the distant starry sky. Their eyes were filled with gratitude and respect. The Fiend Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother were still standing. However, at this moment, the first one to kneel down and thank the desolate martial Great Emperor after the evil spirits broke free. They had been imprisoned for several epochs and countless years. The recognition of their race's bloodline had become fainter and fainter. Only despair and hatred were left in their hearts. And the one who gave them hope and saved them was Great Emperor Araki Takashi. Boom, boom, boom. Some evil spirits broke free from the restrictions of the sinners and sensed the surrounding heaven-earth essence chi and great Tao laws. The barriers that had been suppressed for many years were loosened and they broke through. Kill, kill, kill. After breaking free, the hatred that had been suppressed in the hearts of these evil spirits for many years completely erupted. Many evil spirits charged toward the celestial tribute world. Among them there were no imperial emperors. But to them they were no longer afraid of death. The 10 gates of hell opened up a path and smashed toward the imperial emperors of the celestial tribute world. What celestial tribute world lord? What peak imperial emperors? None of them could stop the 10 gates of hell. The celestial tribute world wailed as countless cultivators fled in all directions. The Iron Crown Elder, Northern Kuan the Arch, Frost Dragon Emperor, Elder Ape, and the others also gave orders to attack the celestial tribute world. The celestial tribute world's destiny was over. The celestial tribute world that had existed for countless years was finally going to be destroyed in this era. Wu Dao's main body did not spend much time on the celestial tribute world. Instead, he looked up at the sky and soared into the sky, flying toward the heavenly courts. Now there were only 6 heavenly courts lords left in the heavenly courts. Although the 9 heavens great formation was powerful, there would definitely be flaws without 3 heavenly courts lords. The sense of danger became more and more pressing. He had to break the 9 heavens great formation as soon as possible and kill his way into the heavenly courts. If he met with an accident before this, he would die. Only Dai Yu, the Fiend Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother were left. Against the 6 heavenly courts lords, the outcome was still uncertain. End of this chapter. Chapter 3186. Dai Yu came to Wu Dao's side and stopped him. 2 of the heavenly court's 8 great emperors are dead. One of them is still trapped in the Avicii hell. With the current situation, there's no need to rush. The heavenly court should be the one in a hurry. Dai Yu was confused. Wu Dao's main body had just entered the great emperor realm, but he already had such strength. If he was given more time to cultivate to the great circle of the great emperor realm, their chances of victory would be even greater. Even if the Vermilion Heaven Master could come back from the dead during this period of time, they would still have the absolute advantage. Dai Yu could understand this. She didn't believe that Wu Dao's main body couldn't see it. Moreover, she could vaguely sense that Wu Dao's main body's condition wasn't right. That was why she chased after Wu Dao's main body and asked, "It's too late." Wu Dao's main body was silent for a moment before replying softly. He didn't tell Dai Yu about the danger of the Yuanwu world. He also wanted to stop and continue cultivating. However, when the great emperors of the heavenly court retreated, he had already dispersed the Yuanwu world. However, the sense of danger was still there. He had been locked onto. The 2 of them had a tacit understanding. Moreover, at this cultivation level there was no need to explain too much. Dai Yu could roughly guess. After a moment of silence, Dai Yu asked, "Will I die?" "Probably." Wu Dao's main body said. He could only determine that the source of the danger came from the Great Thousand Realms. However, whether it was a person, something, or some unknown restriction he didn't know. He also didn't know if he could survive this calamity. However, when he was locked onto by the power of the Great Thousand Realms, the Netherworld Treasure Mirror, which had been silent in the depths of the Yuanwu world, became restless. The Netherworld Treasure Mirror revealed a kind of emotion. There was fear, wariness, anger, and most of all, hatred. There was an extremely evil life form hidden in the Netherworld Treasure Mirror. Wu Dao's main body had never been able to subdue it. Therefore he had never used this treasure. After stepping into the Emperor realm, he had no use for this treasure, so it was always left in the origin martial world. Dai Yu remained silent and didn't say anything. However, Wu Dao's main body could see the worry in her heart. "Nothing." Wu Dao smiled and consoled. "If you want to succeed in conquering the heavens, how can there be no bloodshed and no deaths? If that's the case, let's start with me. What's more, even if this true body of mine is destroyed, I still have Qinglian's true body, so I'm not really dead." Dai Yu was silent. Even so, she knew that this Wu Dao true body had an extremely special meaning to Su Zimo. At this moment, the evil emperor also came to their side and said, "It's not impossible to slow down the attack. You don't have to worry that during this period, there will be powerhouses from the Great Thousand World descending upon the heavenly court. There's a barrier between the 3 realms, and it's protected by the rules of the heavenly Tao. Not just anyone can casually descend. Ascending from a lower realm to a higher realm was a process that went along with the natural laws and the rules of the heavenly Tao. However, if one were to do it in reverse, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens." Wu Dao's main body and Dai Yu were both aware of this matter. Back then, as an immortal king powerhouse, the human emperor Lin Zhan had forcefully descended to the lower realm. Not only was his battle strength greatly reduced, he was also severely injured and hadn't recovered for many years. The reason why immortal emperors could break through the restrictions of the rules and head to the lesser thousand world was mainly because they were supposed to ascend to the great thousand world. Due to the existence of the heavenly court, immortal emperors were unable to ascend, which caused many immortal emperors to remain in the middle thousand world. In a sense, the appearance of the heavenly court had broken the natural laws of the three realms and caused countless disasters and chaos. Yu suddenly asked, "Back then, how did the Lord of the heavenly court descend?" This was an extremely important question. Since the three realms had a barrier, logically speaking, powerhouses like the Lord of the heavenly court shouldn't have come to the middle thousand world. The evil emperor said faintly, "Back then something happened in the great thousand world, causing the barrier between the great thousand world and the middle thousand world to be broken. That's why we fell." The evil emperor spoke casually, but Wu Dao's main body and Yu could tell that what happened in the great thousand world back then was no small matter. Even the barrier of the three realms was broken. What kind of power was that? The evil emperor continued, "Over the years, the barrier between the great thousand world and the middle thousand world has been more or less repaired. It's very difficult for powerhouses from the great thousand world to descend." Wu Dao's main body suddenly asked, "In the era of battle, before the Emperor of Battle died, he fought to the death of the Lord of Great Sky. Since he came back from the dead, why is he still able to appear in the heavenly court of the middle thousand world? If the Lord of Great Sky came from the great thousand world, he should have returned to the great thousand world after being killed by the Emperor of Battle. This is another reason for the existence of the heavenly court." The evil emperor said, "They left a wisp of their Tao seal in the 9 heavens. As long as the 9 heavens are not broken, their Tao seal will not be destroyed. Even if they die, they can be resurrected in the 9 heavens." Wu Dao's main body said in a low voice, "In other words, we have to completely cut off their path of rebirth in the 9 heavens. Either we imprison them forever or we kill them and destroy the 9 heavens to destroy the Tao seal they left in the 9 heavens." "That's right." The evil emperor nodded. Although that was the case, they had not even entered the heavenly court in the past. The battlefield had always been in the middle thousand world. "Then, let's destroy the 9 heavens." Wu Dao's main body looked up at the sky and soared into the sky again. Yu did not dissuade him. She stood side by side with Wu Dao's main body and charged towards the heavenly court. The Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, and Nirvana Ghost Mother exchanged glances. They did not stop and followed closely behind. The closer they were to the heavenly court, the stronger the pressure from the heavens. In fact, with their cultivation they should not feel such pressure at all. Instead, they should feel the call of the great thousand world and ascend. This pressure came from the heavenly court. Wu Dao's main body opened a path with the 10 gates of hell. He broke through the layers of fog and a vast and boundless barrier appeared. It was like a huge dome that covered the middle thousand world. On this huge dome, one could vaguely see 9 regions that corresponded to the 9 heavens. At this time, countless runes appeared on this dome. They shone with a dazzling brilliance and emitted thousands of rays of light. Like a rain of arrows, they shot towards Wu Dao's main body, the Butterfly Moon Demon Master, Evil Emperor, Nirvana Ghost Mother, and the others. The 9 heavens great formation had been activated. If they wanted to kill their way into the heavenly court, the 9 heavens great formation would be the first obstacle. The prison-suppressing cauldron hovered above Wu Dao's main body. The 4 saint souls revolved around him and the Buddha figures appeared. They went against the rain of arrows and charged forward. The Butterfly Moon Demon Master, Evil Emperor, and Nirvana Ghost Mother also used their own methods and charged towards the 9 heavens great formation. Chapter 3187. However, the rain of arrows could not stop Wu Dao's true body and the other 5 thearchs. If it were a few eras ago, the 9 heavens formation would be much more powerful with 9 thearchs presiding over it. But now, 3 of the 9 lords of the heavenly courts were gone, and only 6 were left to operate the 9 heavens formation. Their strength was ultimately weaker. Moreover, there was a variable like Wu Dao's true body in this life. Wu Dao retracted the Yuanwu world. Since the danger had yet to come, Wu Dao's true body no longer hid. He brought out the Yuanwu world again and merged it with the martial universe, pushing his battle strength to the limit. Under the rain of arrows, Wu Dao's true body was not obstructed. Instead, his movement technique was even faster. His entire body was burning with flames, and he was like a huge fireball, crashing toward the 9 heavens formation. Boom. Accompanied by an earth-shattering explosion, sparks flew everywhere. Wu Dao's true body reappeared. With just a single impact, the 9 heavens grand formation shook non-stop. The runes imprinted on it flickered and flickered non-stop. The rain of arrows was also interrupted. Dai Yu, the Fiend Master, the Evil the Arch, and the Brahma Ghost Mother took the opportunity to close in and attack the Nine Heavens formation. Seeing that they were about to enter the heavenly courts and had the highest chance of succeeding in this life, Dai Yu, the Fiend Master, the Evil the Arch, and the Brahma Ghost Mother did not hold back. After the three blood swords, Zhan, Vanquish, and Slaughter, appeared behind the Fiend Master. The Fiend Master brought out the fourth blood sword, Vanquish. With the four blood swords out, the Fiend Master's killing intent almost materialized. It was extremely tragic and bloody. The Fiend Master stood on the empty tombstone, his black hair dancing wildly. Blood energy swirled around him. With a wave of his hand, the four blood swords attacked the Nine Heavens formation fiercely under his control. Clang, 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 clang. The blood swords slashed continuously, colliding with the Nine Heavens formation and letting out ear-piercing sounds of metal clashing. The Fiend Master's killing intent was so heavy and intense that even the Evil the Arch and the Brahma Ghost Mother beside him frowned slightly, seemingly unable to withstand it. The Evil Emperor also unleashed a series of powerful attacks. She stood on top of a large ship that sailed across the galaxy. Beside her, countless armored horses broke through the ice river and came over. She clapped her hands lightly, creating countless palm shadows that seemed real and illusory at the same time. Under the attacks of the Evil Emperor, the light of the runes on the Nine Heavens' great array gradually dimmed, as if they had fallen into a deep sleep, lost in a dream. The Brahma Ghost Mother's figure disappeared as she unleashed the Brahma and I as one technique. She merged with the great Brahma heaven and transformed into an endless black fog. The black fog seeped into the Nine Heavens' great formation. The sanguine butterfly phenomenon behind Dai Yu merely had to flap its wings slightly to create a massive tornado that could destroy the world. An endless blood-colored storm howled and swept across the Nine Heavens' great array. Countless runes were torn apart by this storm. Of course, the most terrifying scene was Wu Dao's original body. Wu Dao's original body merged with two worlds and pushed his combat strength to the limit. The 10 gates of hell bombarded him one after another. His body burned with flames and the hell-suppressing cauldron hovered above his head. He raised his fists and smashed towards the Nine Heavens' great formation continuously. Wu Dao's original body's current combat strength had already surpassed the limits of the middle world. Earlier on, even the Lord of Firmament, Lord of White Sky, and Lord of Black Heaven spat out blood when facing his fists. Right now, Wu Dao's original body was punching continuously. The Nine Heavens' great formation shook continuously and many runes shattered. Their light dimmed and fell from the formation. The dome above Wu Dao's original body had already caved in deeply from his punches. It was completely deformed and was about to collapse. After an unknown period of time, boom, there was a deafening sound that shook the world. Under the gaze of countless beings in the world, a gigantic hole was punched through the dome of the Nine Heavens that shone with endless brilliance by Wu Dao's original body. The Nine Heavens' great formation was broken. Although it was just a hole, it caused the power of the Nine Heavens' great formation to decrease greatly and an irreparable flaw appeared. Boom, 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 boom. Between heaven and earth, there were 4 consecutive deafening sounds. Under the attacks of Dai Yu, the Demon Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother, the Nine Heavens' great formation in front of them was also broken. Crack, crack, crack. Enormous power continued to spread toward the Nine Heavens' great formation. The dazzling dome was covered with dense cracks. The Nine Heavens' great formation could not withstand the joint attack of Wu Dao's original body and the 5 great emperors and was already broken into pieces. After a short silence, there was a deafening sound. Under the gaze of everyone, the Nine Heavens' great formation collapsed with a loud bang. Immediately after, endless, rich and pure vital chi of heaven and earth suddenly surged from behind the dome. It was majestic and surging like a shocking tide, covering the sky and earth. All the beings in the middle world were stunned. Their eyes and mouths were wide open and their faces were full of shock. Before this, Wu Dao's original body had said that the Nine Heavens' great formation sealed the vital chi of heaven and earth, causing the vital chi of heaven and earth to be thin and the beings in the middle world had difficulty cultivating. At that time, many people in the 3000 worlds still did not believe this. It was only now that the beings in the 3000 worlds saw it with their own eyes that they completely woke up to reality. The Nine Heavens' great formation. What sins has the heavenly court done all these years? The people in the heavenly court are high and mighty. They do not treat us as humans at all. They only reward us with a little bit of vital chi of heaven and earth and make us kill each other for a little bit of resources. The vital chi of heaven and earth that surged from the heavenly court was too rich. It almost turned into a sea of vital chi, rolling up raging waves and surging toward the 3,000 worlds. It flowed through millions of miles of galaxies and turned into a boundless vital chi rain that poured down. This vital chi rain covered the entire 3,000 worlds. Even the heaven wasteland domain, which was at the edge of the middle world, was shrouded in this rain. The middle world's edge, which was originally barren and dry, had many stars that were lifeless. Under the nourishment of this rain, they woke up one after another and were reborn. Araki Takashi preached the Tao and imparted martial arts to all beings in order to pass on Wu Dao's fire seed. No one would immediately benefit from this. And at this moment, the nine heavens' great formation was shattered, and the vital chi rain fell from the sky. This was an unimaginable opportunity for the myriad races of the 3,000 worlds. Every living being, even the weakest one, would benefit from this. Almost all cultivators felt the opportunity to break through at this moment. Some people with outstanding talent, due to the lack of cultivation resources, had fallen into a bottleneck. Now that they had such an opportunity, they even broke through 2 or 3 small realms in a row. The vital chi rain was only the most direct impact on the myriad races. After breaking the nine heavens' great formation, everyone finally saw the legendary heavenly court. At this moment, many Emperor Realm experts felt as if they had broken through the fog and widened their horizons. The great Tao in front of them was instantly dispelled. Originally, after stepping into the Emperor Realm for the myriad races, they seemed to have reached the end. But at this moment, all the Emperor Realm experts realized that the great Tao was long and the road ahead had not been cut off. Some Emperor Realm experts began to loosen the barrier of their realms. Chapter 3188. The Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi in the heavenly court had been accumulating for several eras. It had even formed an ocean of Yuan Qi in the heavenly court. Now that it was pouring down, what a scene it was. The Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi that had been accumulating for several eras suddenly surging into the middle world was like a complete awakening for all living beings. Su Zimo had cultivated 5 grotto heavens. If he wanted to break through, he would need an unimaginable amount of Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi. He had just reached the greater success stage of the grotto heaven realm not long ago. Normally speaking, it would take him at least 10,000 years to reach the peak of the grotto heaven realm. But now he had been baptized by this Yuan Qi rain. His 5 grotto heavens were all open, crazily absorbing the Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi descending from the heavenly court. Before long, the Yuan Qi in his 5 grotto heavens had accumulated to the peak. Boom, 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 boom. Accompanied by 5 loud bangs, the 5 grotto heavens transformed again. The peak of the grotto heaven realm. Su Zimo had advanced to the peak of the immortal king stage. His primordial spirit cultivation level also rose, breaking through to the monarch realm. Qinglian's 5 grotto heavens had all broken through. The other living beings and cultivators also broke through after receiving such a huge amount of Yuan Qi. Yun Ting had originally cultivated to the peak of the sky human stage. The moment the Yuan Qi descended, he broke through to the Kongming stage. As the Yuan Qi poured into his body, the Yuan Qi in his body accumulated more and more. He broke through again and entered the Dongshu stage. Breaking through 2 stages in the True Self stage showed how terrifying Yun Ting's talent was. If it were someone else whose primordial spirit was not high enough and could not comprehend the True Self stage, it would be difficult for them to achieve such an effect even if they had endless Yuan Qi. Yun Ting was overjoyed. Ever since he found out about Su Zimo's true identity, he had given up on chasing after Su Zimo. Now he had set his goal on Su Zimo's disciple, Kitsune. He subconsciously turned to look at Bai Mingxue and was slightly taken aback. Kitsune had also broken through. Moreover, she had crossed a major stage from the peak of the true martial stage to the martial domain stage. Kitsune had cultivated her own domain. In this domain, sword chi crisscrossed and tens of thousands of swords resonated. This was also why Wu Dao was so precious. Cultivating Wu Dao would not cause the future of many martial artists to be the same. Every martial artist could condense a different martial spirit. They could walk their own path and their future would be limitless. As Araki Takashi's eldest disciple, Kitsune had completely inherited Wu Dao. However, her Dao was also very different from Araki Takashi's. Wu Dao's future would be a grand occasion where 100 flowers bloomed and 100 schools of thought contended. The only thing that remained unchanged was Wu Dao's spirit. Monkey, Night Spirit, Tiger, Ching Ching, Little Fox, the Golden Lion Brothers, the Heaven Wasteland Sect 7 Emotions Demon General, Yan Beichen, Ming Zhen, Demonis Ji, and the others all made breakthroughs. Immortal King Ling Long and Feng Cantian had reached the peak of the Grotto Heaven realm. As for the dread King Yuxia, he had directly stepped into the Emperor realm. Lin Zhan had also stepped into the Arch realm. There were even some kings and quasi-emperors who were nearing the end of their lifespans who broke through and stepped into the Arch realm. Their lifespans increased drastically and they were reborn. This was an unimaginable opportunity for the myriad races in the middle world. It increased the overall strength of the middle world by a large margin. This was the heaven-earth essence energy that the heavenly courts had accumulated for several epochs. It was all on the heads of the myriad races in this middle world. One could imagine the changes it brought to the middle world. And this heaven-earth essence energy, such a fortuitous opportunity, should belong to the middle world. In the 3,000 realms, many imperial emperors who were in seclusion also woke up at this moment. Some imperial emperors who had been stuck at a bottleneck for millions of years also began to loosen their realm barriers. Some ordinary imperial emperors transformed into peerless imperial emperors. Some peerless imperial emperors directly advanced to peak imperial emperors. Although peak imperial emperors were unable to advance further, their comprehension of Tao techniques had increased by a level. After breaking through the 9 heavens' great array, the myriad races in the 3,000 realms felt a strange feeling in their hearts. Cultivation seemed to have become much easier. It was as if the unattainable and unshakable mountain that was pressing down on their heads had suddenly collapsed. Everyone felt relieved. The myriad races gradually realized that their cultivation did not have to be so difficult. The many disturbances in the middle world and the many sufferings on their bodies originated from the heavenly courts. Some imperial emperors could even vaguely sense the aura from the great 1,000 realms. Only at this moment did the imperial emperors see a glimmer of hope of ascending to the great 1,000 realms. The 9 heavens' great array was broken, and the heavenly courts were completely exposed to Wu Dao's original body and the others. The so-called heavenly courts were connected by 9 huge floating clouds that were mixed with sand and soil. Wu Dao's original body even smelled a familiar aura from these 9 floating clouds. Living soil. This point also happened to coincide with his previous conjecture. The living soil that Qinglian created was the same kind of living soil as the living soil in the 9 heavens. Above the 9 floating clouds, one could see immortal islands, heavenly palaces, and thousands of golden rays of light. Just the huge heavenly gate that stood in front of the heavenly palaces looked grand and majestic. It was made of glass and flowed with divine charm. It was inlaid with precious jade and flickered with resplendent light. On both sides of the heavenly gate, there were many heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals guarding it. They were murderous. 9 thick and huge stone pillars that reached the sky entered the depths of the clouds above the heavenly courts. Sacred beast azure dragons coiled around them. 9 heavenly bridges spanned across the 9 floating clouds and connected them together. There were luan phoenixes flying and vermilion birds chirping. Everywhere one looked, the heavenly courts were filled with countless spiritual objects of heaven and earth, immortal herbs, trees, and many famous flowers and plants. Even Wu Dao's original body could not name them. Many spiritual objects of heaven and earth had long gone extinct in the middle world. However, they could be seen everywhere in the heavenly courts. Even a spiritual root like the divine tree of heaven and earth grew in the heavenly courts. It was far thicker than the one in Heaven Wasteland domain. This was only the tip of the iceberg in the heavenly courts. After being transformed by Qinglian's true body, Heaven Wasteland domain was like a paradise in the eyes of everyone. However, when they saw the scene in the heavenly courts, the people of the myriad races realized what a true paradise was. Compared to the heavenly courts, the places they lived and cultivated were like pigpens and horse stalls. After every upheaval of heaven and earth, the heavenly courts, as the final victors, would plunder large amounts of treasures from the middle world. The heavenly court had relied entirely on the oppression of all living beings of all races for several eras, and the plundering of the medium-class worlds to achieve what they had today. When they saw the scene in the heavenly courts, there was no need for others to explain anything. The heavenly courts had trampled on them and taken away everything that belonged to them. They had sealed the Heaven Wasteland domain's essence energy. Not only did they treat them as livestock, they also wanted to use them, deceive them, trample on their dignity, and manipulate their fates as they wished. Any cultivator with a bit of passion would have an uncontrollable anger towards the heavenly courts. It was only at this moment that they understood why those ancient emperors, despite knowing that they were no match for the heavenly courts, stepped forward bravely and attacked them time and time again. The evil of the heavenly courts was too numerous to be recorded. Chapter 3189. Before Wu Dao's original body stepped into the heavenly court, he turned around and looked at the familiar figures in the middle world. A complicated expression appeared on his face. It was like a reluctance, a longing. Now he had only broken the 9 heavens formation. He had not suppressed the remaining 6 masters of the heavenly court, nor had he destroyed the seals they had left in the heavenly court. Moreover, in the heavenly court, the 6 masters of the heavenly court would definitely be able to unleash their full strength. This battle might be even more troublesome than in the middle world. The war against the heavens was not over. The heavenly court was vast and boundless. Wu Dao's original body and the others would gradually leave the middle world and would no longer be able to care about this place. Great Emperor Araki Takashi, Great Emperor Shui Dai. An immortal emperor expert shouted, "You must win. We must win this battle." Another person shouted, "Great Emperor Araki Takashi, Great Emperor Shui Dai, thank you. Great Emperor Araki Takashi, take care. Great Emperor Araki Takashi, Great Emperor Shui Dai, you must live well." Many members of the butterfly clan burst into tears and cried out loud. Their eyes were filled with reluctance. More and more voices came from the various realms. Many experts realized that Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Shui Dai were about to enter the territory of the heavenly court and engage in the final battle with the masters of the heavenly court. Everyone's shouts were not only for their own ascension, but also from the bottom of their hearts. It was because of the desolate martial Great Emperor's appearance and the blood butterfly Great Emperor's attainment of the middle 1000 Dao that the myriad races were saved from a crisis. It was also because of these 2 great emperors that they could see the true face of the heavenly court in this life and know the truth of the past. At this moment, the myriad races were awakened. The 2 great emperors had ignited the hope in their hearts. Breaking the 9 heavens formation had brought endless opportunities and benefits to the middle world and the myriad races. The fact that Great Emperor Araki Takashi had passed down Wu Dao without any reservations had moved countless experts and convinced them. Everyone could faintly feel that after Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Blood Butterfly left, they would not be able to see each other again. That was why they could not help but speak up. If they succeeded, the 2 great emperors would naturally ascend to the greater world together. If they failed, the 2 great monarchs would die and their Dao would vanish. Naturally they would not return. This farewell might be the last time they would see the 2 great emperors. Listening to the voices from all the races in the 3000 worlds, Wu Dao's true body was shocked. He took a deep breath and faced the direction of the middle world. He cupped his hands and said, "I look forward to meeting all of you in the greater world. Everyone, take care." Even so, the outcome of this battle was hard to predict, and he was facing a life and death crisis from the Great Thousand World. Not to mention ascending to the great wide world, it was unknown whether he could survive this trip. Dai Yu's heart was moved, and she also felt reluctant, but she did not say anything. Her Great Wilderness Sutra had already been left with the butterfly race. Perhaps there was nothing left for her to miss in the middle world. Dai Yu's expression was indifferent, and she did not say a word. However, when she turned around and faced away from all the races, she gently waved her hand. Then she walked side by side with Wu Dao and sped towards the heavenly court. Only 2 figures were left, and they disappeared into the purple clouds. The Demon Master, Evil Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother followed closely and killed their way into the heavenly court. Heaven Wasteland Domain. Lin Zhan looked at Su Zimo and said in a deep voice, "I have already stepped into the Emperor Realm. I should gather some Emperor Realm experts and kill our way into the heavenly court." Su Zimo's expression was solemn. He shook his head slightly and said, "I'm afraid we don't have to go to the heavenly court. They will take the initiative to come to the middle world." Immortal King Ling Long also nodded and said, "Now that the middle world is no longer protected by the great emperors, if the master of the heavenly court wants to fight to the death, he will most likely send the rest of the heavenly court's army to the lower world to take revenge on us." The strength of the heavenly court was unfathomable. In the battle of the great emperors in the middle world just now, although the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals did not make a move, there were hundreds of imperial emperors in the heavenly court alone. It was truly shocking. Fortunately, after breaking the 9 heavens great array, the overall strength of the living beings in the middle world had increased greatly. The number and strength of the imperial emperors had increased. If they could really gather all the imperial emperors in the middle world, they might be able to fight against the heavenly court. Of course, this was not realistic. Until now, there were still some worlds in the 3000 worlds that were wavering. For example, the light world, the stone world, and the heavenly eye world. For countless years, their fear of the heavenly court had been deeply rooted in their bones. Even if they knew the truth and saw the evil of the heavenly court, they still did not dare to declare war on the heavenly court. After being oppressed and enslaved for a long time, the experts in these worlds had been subtly enslaved and cowered. I'm worried about another thing now. Immortal King Ling Long seemed to have thought of something. She suddenly frowned and said, now that the world is in chaos, will the Academy Patriarch wait for an opportunity to make a move? If the Heavenly Court army came and fought with the experts of the Heaven Wasteland domain, the Sword World and the Kuanping World, the Academy Patriarch's sudden appearance would definitely bring a heavy blow to them. He won't. Su Zimo shook his head slightly and said, the Academy Patriarch is very cautious. After he lost to my Wu Dao's true body that day, he has been hiding his tracks. It was only a few years ago that he first appeared, and then he went into hiding again. As long as Wu Dao's true body is still alive, the Academy Patriarch will not dare to appear and fight against us. Elder Xian nodded and said, although the situation is chaotic now, Zimo has Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Shuedai on his side. If the Academy Patriarch appears at this time, he will be courting death. He has always been cautious. If he is not 100% confident, he will not act. Not to mention that Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Shuedai are still around. Even if the two of them ascend to the greater world, he may not dare to appear unless he has absolute confidence in winning. Elder Xian had been friends with the Academy Patriarch for many years and knew him best. Elder Xian was right. When the Academy Patriarch laid his cards on the table against Su Zimo, he was indeed very confident and had absolute confidence in winning. However, because of the Emperor's tomb, there were variables that the Academy Patriarch could not deduce. The owner of the Emperor's tomb was the Lord of the Underworld, the mysterious Emperor of Fengdu. No matter how strong the Academy Patriarch's deduction ability was, he could not deduce that it was him. In the heavenly court, boom, Wu Dao's true body descended. He took a step forward and crushed the huge heavenly gate in front of him. He charged towards the depths of the heavenly court, and no one dared to stop him. He knew in his heart that what came next would be a tough battle. They had already charged into the heavenly court. If they broke through the obstruction, they would be able to ascend to the greater world. The 6 lords of the heavenly court would do their best to protect the last line of defense. 6 figures appeared in front of them. They spread out and faced Wu Dao's true body, Daiyu the Fiend Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother. The battle began again. Chapter 3190. In the heavenly courts, Daiyu could clearly feel that her Dao seal was being suppressed. This also meant that her Dao techniques would be weakened in the heavenly courts, causing her to be unable to unleash her full combat strength. The Fiend Master, the Demonic Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother did not show any abnormalities. In the middle world, their combat strength was already suppressed to a certain extent. Here it was still the same. However, in the heavenly courts, the combat strength of the 6 heavenly courts masters would be increased. It would be difficult for them to gain an advantage against the masters of the heavenly courts. Even Wu Dao's martial universe and origin martial grotto heaven felt a huge pressure. The Dark Heaven Master and Dark Heaven Master, who were originally injured, seemed to have recovered. When Wu Dao and the other 5 emperors stepped into the heavenly courts, the attention of the 6 heavenly courts masters was all on Wu Dao. To them the biggest threat was Wu Dao. As long as they could suppress Wu Dao's true body, it would be difficult for the remaining 4 emperors to defeat them in the heavenly courts. Kill. The 6 heavenly courts masters attacked first. With a thought, they took out their natal divine weapons. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Heavenly Great Sacred Seal, Heavenly Great Sacred Claw, Heavenly Great Sacred Hammer, Heavenly Profound Sacred Shield, Heavenly Abyss Sacred Painting, Heavenly Bright Sacred Blade, Heavenly Vermilion Sacred Sword, Heavenly Flame Sacred Furnace, Heavenly Sun Sacred Ring. The 9 natal divine weapons pierced through the air. Even the suppressed Fire Heaven Master, White Heaven Master, and Vermilion Heaven Master, who had just been killed by the Demonic Emperor, appeared in the heavenly courts. And now the 9 natal divine weapons were all attacking Wu Dao's true body. This was equivalent to the 6 heavenly courts masters joining forces to attack Wu Dao's true body. Daiyu saw this and immediately attacked. The Fiend Master, Demonic Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother also attacked. Without the help of their natal divine weapons, the Great Heaven Master, Dark Heaven Master, Sun Heaven Master, and Sky Heaven Master were not at a disadvantage against Daiyu, the Fiend Master, Demonic Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother. In the middle world, Daiyu could even take on 2 opponents at once. But in the heavenly court, Dai could only stop one lord of the heavenly court. Master of Firmament and Master of Xian Heaven still chose to fight against Wu Dao's original body. Although the White Sky Lord was missing this time, he had the help of the 9 great divine weapons. The 9 great divine weapons contained the will of the 9 heavens and the Dao seal, condensing the power of the 9 heavens. Wu Dao's true body fought back with the prison-suppressing cauldron and the 10 gates of hell. A series of earth-shattering explosions erupted in the sky above the heaven court. The 9 heavens as the court, heaven's will as the blade. At this moment, the 6 lords of the heavenly courts shouted at the same time, their hands forming hand seals. The seals of the 6 lords of the celestial courts formed. At the same time, the seals of the other 3 heavens also arrived and merged with the seals of the other 6. The 9 heavens Taoist seal merged and transformed into an ancient long saber. Whoosh! The long saber slashed down, splitting the heavens and earth apart. Boom! Wu Dao's true body raised his hand and punched out, colliding with the long saber. A deafening explosion erupted. This long saber condensed the will of the 9 heavens. And Wu Dao's true body's fist condensed Wu Dao's will. At this moment, Wu Dao's will was fighting against the heaven court's will. This was a true heaven-defying Dao. Boom, boom, boom. It looked like it was just Master of Firmament and Master of Xian Heaven against Wu Dao's true body. But in reality, what Wu Dao's true body faced was the power of the 9 heavens. Master of Firmament wielded the heavens will saber while Master of Xian Heaven transformed into his true body. With a thick tortoise shell on his back and many defensive methods, he tried his best to block and neutralize the attacks of Wu Dao's true body. The 2 of them cooperated well, one attacking and one defending. Even though Wu Dao's true body's 2 worlds resonated, it was difficult to suppress the 2 of them. The other 4 pairs of great thearchs were also abnormally intense. Dai Yu only had a slight advantage against Lord of Dim Heaven. The evil Emperor and Lord of Sun Heaven fought and the outcome could not be determined. The Fiend Lord took out 4 blood swords and fought Lord of Great Heaven. They were also evenly matched. And the Brahma Ghost Mother was at a disadvantage against Lord of Great Heaven. The various great thearchs fought in the heaven court from the south to the north, from the east to the west. Huge shockwaves of power shattered the heaven court. The Fiend Lord, Evil Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother's Ashura army, Beast army, and Ghost army were also wantonly slaughtering in the heaven court. They fought with the many heavenly soldiers and generals, causing rivers of blood to flow and corpses to be everywhere. Middle World. The myriad races could not see the scene of the battle in the heaven court. They could only feel the huge tremors coming from the depths of the heaven court. The 9 floating clouds in the sky had also shattered. As time passed, countless rare treasures, immortal herbs, spirit trees and natural treasures fell from the heaven court and scattered across the 3,000 worlds. This was another huge fortuitous opportunity for the myriad races. However, along with these natural treasures, there was also a dense heavenly court army that blotted out the sky. Against the Ashura army, Beast army and Ghost army, the heaven court's Great Heaven, Yu Heaven, Min Heaven, Yang Heaven and Zhu Heaven armies fought. As for the Heaven, White Heaven, Black Heaven and Flame Heaven armies, they were still indignant. They made a comeback and charged into the middle world again. The 4 heavenly courts had suffered heavy losses in the Battle of the Grand Wilderness. Nearly half of their imperial lords were killed. In the battle just now, of the 4 inspector heavenly ambassadors of the 4 heavenly courts, 2 were killed by Wu Dao's true body and 1 was killed by Dai Yu. Only the mysterious heaven inspector heavenly ambassador was left. Of the 4 heavenly courts young masters, only young master Xian Heaven was left. This was an unacceptable loss to the 4 heavenly courts. Now, the great emperors of the middle world were in the depths of the heavenly courts and had no time to care about other things. Under the lead of the mysterious heaven inspector heavenly ambassador and young master Xian Heaven, the armies of the 4 heavenly courts returned to the middle world and were ready to slaughter. Without the great emperors, the myriad races of the middle world were like meat on a chopping board in their eyes. They could slaughter them at will. Kill? The mysterious heaven inspector heavenly ambassador pointed in the direction of the sword world. On the other side, young master Xian Heaven led the Black Heaven and Flame Heaven armies and charged toward the heaven wasteland domain. They're here. The imperial lords of the sword world and the heaven wasteland domain had grave expressions. Even with great Emperor Araki Takashi breaking the 9 heavens great formation and sending down the Yuan-Chi rain, the overall strength of the middle world was greatly improved. However, the difference in strength between the 2 sides was still extremely large. There were more than 400 imperial lords of the 4 heavenly courts. Including the mounts of these imperial emperors, the number of martial emperors was probably more than 700. Moreover, these 400 imperial lords of the heavenly courts were either from the sacred beast race or had the bloodline of sacred beasts flowing in their bodies. Their battle strength was heaven-defying and they could take on 10 people at once. Even the mounts of these imperial lords of the heavenly courts were dragons and phoenixes. As for the Sword World, the Heaven Wasteland Domain, the Kunpeng World, the Dragon World, the Flower World, the Great Wasteland Domain, the Blood Ape World, the Hell Domain, and the Rakshasa Sind Land, there were only 100 or so imperial lords. The number of peak imperial lords was even fewer, unless they could gather all the imperial lords of the 3,000 domains. Under the shroud of the opportunity just now, countless imperial lords were born in the 3,000 domains and countless imperial lords who were in seclusion awakened from their slumber. If they could gather all the imperial lords of the 3,000 domains, they would definitely be able to fight against the 4 heavenly courts. However, this was not realistic. The battle in the heavenly courts was still undecided. Even if the imperial lords of some domains were grateful to Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Blood Butterfly and wanted to help, they would still be wary. Chapter 3191. Husband, the battle was imminent. Immortal King Ling Long gazed at Lin Zhan while a wave of terror suddenly arose in her heart, and she couldn't help but call out softly. Don't worry. Lin Zhan gently patted Immortal King Ling Long's hand and comforted her. The Heaven Wasteland Domain still has Emperor North Kuan, Emperor South Rock, Emperor Nine-Tailed Demon Empress and a few other peak imperial emperors. We might still have a chance. That being said, the situation on the Heaven Wasteland Domain side was extremely grim. The only emperor of Heaven Wasteland Domain was Lin Zhan. Including the Rakshasa imperial emperors in the Great Wasteland Domain, there were less than 30 of them. On the other hand, young Master Shen Tian led more than 300 imperial emperors toward Heaven Wasteland Domain. The number of imperial emperors was 10 times that of Heaven Wasteland Domain. Heaven Wasteland Domain had Araki Takashi and Dayu to protect it. At this moment, both the Araki Takashi Great Emperor and the Blood Butterfly Great Emperor had charged into the depths of the Heavenly Court and were unable to save the Heaven Wasteland Domain. How would the Heaven Wasteland Domain survive this tribulation? I'm afraid this battle? Immortal King Ling Long had a worried look on her face. She pursed her lips and said slowly, I'm afraid countless people will die. Yes, it's inevitable. Lin Zhan sighed and said, after all, the War of the Heavens is not a game. There will definitely be casualties. Throughout the ages, countless sages have died on this path of heaven, but in the end, they didn't even get to see the heavenly court. Compared to them, we are considered lucky. Looking at the heavenly court's army that was getting closer and closer, Lin Zhan took a deep breath. His eyes burned with fighting spirit as he soared into the sky. Monarch North Kuan, Monarch South Rock, and the other monarchs had solemn expressions on their faces. Once they retreated, none of the billions of beings in Heaven Wasteland Domain would be spared. They could only rely on more than 30 imperial emperors to fight to the death to protect Heaven Wasteland Domain and wait for the outcome of the battle between the great emperors in the heavenly court. In the air, Lin Zhan turned his head and stared at Immortal King Ling Long. He then smiled, Ling Long, wait for me to return. Immortal King Ling Long nodded. Zimo, you too. Immortal King Ling Long turned her gaze and saw that Su Zimo had already moved, rushing towards Shen Tian and Yen Tian's army. Zimo? Almost at the same time, 2 other voices sounded. They came from Yun Zhu and Mo Qing. Don't worry. I'm fine. Su Zimo smiled and didn't stop. In the blink of an eye, he arrived beside Lin Zhan and the other imperial emperors. In fact, Qinglian's real body had never intended to participate in the War of the Heavens. That was why Su Zimo saw it as a way out. But now that it had come to this, he had no way out. The Heaven Wasteland Domain had no way out. His cultivation level was at the peak of the Grotto Heaven realm. His primordial spirit had already reached the Emperor realm. If he used all 5 Grotto Heavens together with his bloodline phenomenon, he would definitely be able to kill an ordinary god monarch. If he were to use the battle of the ancient and modern and expend his lifespan, he would still be able to put up a fight against a powerful god monarch. Of course, if he were to face a peak monarch, all of his current means would be useless. After all, the gap between the two sides was simply too great. However, he relied on the Tai Yin Yang escape art and various movement techniques. Even if a peak imperial emperor wanted to kill him, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Kill him. Young Master Shen Tian's eyes lit up when he saw Su Zimo in the crowd. He waved his hand and gave the order. He wanted to kill Su Zimo with his own hands. However, he still had some concerns. He was worried that after killing Su Zimo, Wu Dao's real body would be lured over. That was why he ordered the Emperor Realm experts under him to test the waters. In fact, Wu Dao's real body had already entered the hinterland of the Heavenly Courts and was entangled by the two masters of the Heavenly Courts. They were fighting to the extreme and could not escape at all. Seeing that Su Zimo was only at the Grotto Heaven Realm, the Emperor Realm experts of the Heavenly Courts did not take him to heart. Two ordinary god monarchs moved and pounced towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo took the opportunity to leave Lin Zhan, Emperor Baiquan, and the others and came to the other side. When the two Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts arrived, Su Zimo took the initiative to attack. He did not hold back and directly took out 5 Grotto Heavens to suppress the two Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts. The two of them's expressions changed drastically. They had never seen such a scene before. What was even more terrifying was that when the 5 Grotto Heavens enveloped them, they actually felt a strong sense of danger. Boom, boom. The two Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts did not have time to think and hurriedly supported a world. Boom. Before the two Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts could completely condense their worlds, Su Zimo's 5 Grotto Heavens had already enveloped them. The two of them spat out blood as if they had been struck by lightning. Their bodies trembled as they hurriedly retreated. As long as they were given some time to catch their breaths and circulate their chi and blood, they would be able to support the world again and charge back. However, when Su Zimo attacked, he silently released the Qingping sword under the cover of the 5 Grotto Heavens. The aura of the 5 Grotto Heavens was too magnificent. It was not inferior to a world. The two Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts were stunned and did not notice the Qingping sword hidden in the 5 Grotto Heavens. A wisp of green light flashed past. By the time the two Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts reacted and sensed that something was wrong, it was already too late. The two of them only felt a sharp pain in their glabella and a slight chill. The next moment, the two of them lost consciousness and fell into the starry sky. In their consciousness, their essence spirits were pierced by the Qingping sword and they died. Oh! Young Master Shen Tian frowned slightly. The other Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts looked over as well. The Heavenly Courts had lost 2 Emperor Realm experts the moment the two sides met. Furthermore, they died in the hands of an immortal king. Young Master Shen Tian, if you want to kill me, do it yourself. Why send others to their deaths? Su Zimo seemed to have seen through young Master Shen Tian's thoughts and suddenly laughed. Young Master Shen Tian's expression darkened and he snorted coldly. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Swoosh. Young Master Shen Tian instantly transformed into the true form of the sacred beast, the black tortoise. Although it looked cumbersome, its 4 legs moved in the starry sky and waves seemed to surge beneath it. Young Master Shen Tian stepped on the waves at an astonishing speed. Su Zimo did not hesitate to turn and flee. He had no chance of winning against young Master Shen Tian. If he killed 1 or 2 ordinary Emperor Realm experts or even a peerless Emperor Realm expert, it would not affect the situation at all. Only by stalling for time as much as possible and holding back the strongest Heavenly Courts Emperor Realm experts or other peak Emperor Realm experts could he reduce the pressure on Lin Zhan and the others. Meanwhile, the battle over at Sword Realm had completely erupted. On Sword Realm's side, apart from the Emperor Realm experts from Sword Realm, Wu Dao's true body had also left an entire army of Hell nearby. Hell's army and Heavenly Court's army were enemies. There was no need to say anything. Both sides collided fiercely and erupted into an extremely tragic battle. In an instant, thousands of living beings died. Sword Realm also joined the battlefield under the lead of the 2 elders, Elder Fat and Elder Thin. Although this army of Hell had many people, due to the destruction of Hell's world and the incomplete Great Tao, the living beings of Hell were stuck at the Grotto Heaven realm. Later on, although they were brought to a medium-class realm by Wu Dao's true body, due to the short period of time, even if they stepped into the Arch realm, their realm improvement was limited. Now, facing the Heavenly Court's army led by the Shen-Tian Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, the difference was immediately apparent. The Shen-Tian Inspector Heavenly Ambassador rampaged through Hell's army. No one could withstand his might. Wherever he went, people were thrown off their feet, leaving behind a trail of corpses. If this continued, it would not be long before Sword Realm and Hell's army were completely annihilated. Chapter 3192. Heavenly Courts. The great battle between the 11 great emperors had caused the Heavenly Court to be in shambles and desolated. In Hell, Shura, the ghost race and the Heavenly Court's army, it no longer looked like a paradise. Everywhere one looked, there were corpses and rivers of blood. The battle between the great emperors in the heavenly courts was even more intense than in the middle world. The 6 lords of the heavenly courts came from the greater world and had many trump cards. Being in the heavenly courts, they could unleash their combat strength to the maximum. Even though Wu Dao's true body was powerful and had the upper hand, the Lord of Firmament and Lord of Black Heaven were forced to retreat, but the 2 of them were still able to hold on. Both sides were exhausted. Wu Dao's true body had appeared very early to fight the heavenly court's army and a few inspector heavenly ambassadors. Then he fought the Lord of White Heaven and the Lord of Hell. After the battle in the middle world, he fought the 2 lords of the heavenly courts in the heavenly courts. After continuous battles, even he could not hold on any longer. Wu Dao's true body could vaguely sense that the 6 lords of the heavenly courts were not only able to unleash their combat strength to the maximum, but they also seemed to have an endless supply of energy. If not, the Lord of Firmament and Lord of Black Heaven would not have lasted until now. After all, the heavenly courts were augmented by the Dao seals of the 9 lords of the heavenly courts. As long as the Dao seals were not destroyed, the lords of the heavenly courts would have a huge advantage in the battlefield. The martial Dao body's heart stirred and a bold idea suddenly flashed through his mind. With his current strength, even if the 2 worlds resonated and released 9 flames, he would not be able to destroy the 9 Dao seals in the heavenly courts. It could only be achieved with the help of other forces. With that thought, Wu Dao's true body no longer hesitated. Apart from the Avicii Hell, the remaining 9 gates of hell opened. Whoosh! The sound of water flowing could be heard from the 9 huge gates. In the next moment, Hell's Spring, Hell's Acheron, Hell's Cold Spring, Hell's Yin Spring, Hell's Serene Spring, Hell's Subterranean Spring, Hell's Bitter Spring and Hell's Water Spring. Almost at the same time, the 9 Hell Springs descended. On the other side, Daiyu saw this scene and flapped her wings, creating a blood-colored storm that landed on the 9 Hell Spring. Storms swept the 9 Hell Springs and Hell, rising into the sky. After call the wind, it was call the rain. Violent winds and torrential rain, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The 9 Hell Spring water turned into a torrential downpour that covered the 9 heavens. This was the joint attack of Wu Dao's true body and Daiyu. It had indeed dealt great damage to the Heaven Court. The first to suffer was the Heaven Court's army. Many of the immortal palaces in the Heavenly Court could not withstand the scouring of the 9 springs of hell. Many immortal herbs and spirit plants withered. However, the 6 lords of the Celestial Court seemed unaffected by the downpour of the 9 springs. Ha 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 ha. The Master of Heavens seemed to have seen through the intention of Wu Dao's original body. He laughed and said, "Araki Takeshi, you want to destroy the Taoist seal that we left in the Heavenly Court with the help of the 9 springs of hell? You must be dreaming." "Really?" Wu Dao's main body didn't explain. He just replied indifferently. The 9 springs of hell possessed all sorts of mystical powers that could even affect imperial emperors. However, Wu Dao's main body had already predicted that the 9 springs of hell might not have any effect on imperial emperors. Through the 9 gates of hell, what he wanted to attract was not the 9 springs of hell, but the source of the 9 springs of hell, the river Styx. He wanted to flood the heavenly court and use the river Styx's power to destroy the Taoist seal of the 9 lords of the heavenly court. Rumble. 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 The 6 lords of the heavenly court felt the aura coming from the 9 gates of hell. Their faces changed drastically. What kind of power is this? Before the 6 lords of the heavenly court could figure it out, the dark and mysterious river Styx's water turned into a destructive torrent that poured into the heavenly court. The vast heavenly court was quickly submerged by the river Styx. The power of the 9 Taoist seals that were left in the heavenly court was obviously weakening. Even Wu Dao's main body didn't know where the river Styx came from and how it was formed. However, he had once drifted with the river Styx for 100 years and could sense the immense power contained within the river. Right now, the essence spirit of Wu Dao's main body couldn't withstand drawing the river Styx out of hell and flowing towards the heavenly courts through the 9 gates of hell. He had expended too much energy in the consecutive battles. Now that the water of the river Styx was drawn over, his essence spirit was extremely weak. The river Styx was so strong that even the 9 gates of hell could not withstand it. As the river Styx surged continuously, coupled with the fact that the essence spirit of Wu Dao's main body was getting weaker, the edges of the 9 gates of hell were filled with cracks. Not long after, it shattered with a loud bang. Although the 9 gates of hell collapsed, Wu Dao's main body had already achieved his goal. The 9 heavens were already drowned by the river Styx. The power of the 6 lords of the heavenly courts was gradually weakening. Although the reduction was not obvious, even the slightest change would have a huge impact on the situation. Bang, bang, bang. Up till this point of the battle, both sides were almost at their limits. Their essence spirits were weak and the worlds were extremely fragile under the constant collisions. They collapsed one after another and turned into nothingness. Even martial forging universe could not withstand it and turned into fragments. The resonance of the two worlds could indeed raise the combat strength of Wu Dao's main body to the limits and even surpass the restrictions of the heavenly Dao's rules on the dimensional world. However, after the continuous battles, the consumption was immense and martial forging universe could not withstand it. After it shattered, the state of the two worlds fusing was naturally dispelled. Without the gates of hell and martial forging universe, Wu Dao's main body could not even release the simplest mystic skills. Dai Yu, the Fiend Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother were in a similar state. The Dao seals were constantly washed away by the water of the river Styx and dimmed. The 6 lords of the heavenly courts were also at the end of their rope. At this point of the battle, the 11 thearchs had even begun fighting in melee. There were no earth-shattering scenes. Instead, they were punches and claws that tore at each other. Bones were broken and flesh was splattered everywhere. It was extremely tragic. Both sides were determined and their Dao hearts were unshakable. The 6 lords of the heavenly courts would not retreat and let Wu Dao's main body and the others pass. As for Wu Dao's main body, Dai Yu, and the Demon Master, the 5 of them would also destroy the heavenly courts in this generation. Both sides relied on the strong will in their hearts and continued to fight. Wu Dao's main body did not have many trump cards, but his physical body was the Yuan Wu world. Even if he could not support a world with this body of Wu Dao's main body could still sweep through everything and suppress strong enemies. Both sides were forced to their limits. In the end, Wu Dao's main body won. The martial Dao body raised both of his fists. They were like a pair of mountains that weighed more than 10,000 caddies as they smashed down continuously. Countless scales fell off the Lord of Firmament's body. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was mangled. The Lord of Black Heaven hid his entire body in a thick tortoise shell. It looked like there were fewer external injuries. However, the shocking divine power that came from Wu Dao's main body's fists could even penetrate his tortoise shell. His internal organs were damaged and his bones were cracking. His teeth were loose and his mouth was full of blood. If this continued, he would probably be killed by Wu Dao's main body through the thick tortoise shell. Chapter 3193. The battlefield in the middle world was also extremely tragic. Many corpses floated in the starry sky, and the smell of blood soared into the sky. Fresh blood, severed limbs and broken arms could be seen everywhere. Su Zimo relied on many movement techniques and escape techniques. Young Master Shen Tian alone could not catch up to him at all, and he escaped time and time again. In his rage, the Lord of Shen Tian commanded more than 50 imperial emperors to surround and kill Su Zimo. Among the 50 imperial emperors, there were 10 peak imperial emperors, and the rest were peerless imperial emperors. Originally, there were some ordinary imperial emperors who were eager to take this opportunity to contribute. However, not only did they fail to make any contributions, they were even killed by Su Zimo in the chaos. After Su Zimo killed several ordinary imperial emperors, the imperial emperors of the heavenly courts realized that ordinary imperial emperors were not enough in front of this peak immortal king. As time passed, the current situation developed. More than 50 imperial emperors, including the Lord of Shen Tian, were constantly chasing after Su Zimo, suppressing his escape space. Holding back more than 50 imperial emperors by himself was already the limit of what Su Zimo could do. Even other peak imperial emperors would not be able to do this. Even so, the situation in the Sword Realm and Heaven Wasteland domain was still not optimistic. After all, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Even if Su Zimo held back more than 50 imperial emperors, it only eased the situation slightly. It was like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. Su Zimo's condition was getting worse and worse. Under the pursuit of the Lord of Shen Tian and the others, he could still take advantage of the chaos to kill a few ordinary imperial emperors. It was impossible for him to escape unscathed. If not for the terrifying self-healing ability of Qinglian, who was a 12th grade creation, and her powerful vitality, he would not dare to take this risk. Even so, he was still heavily injured. His body staggered and his speed was not as fast as before. Even with the powerful healing ability of Qinglian's true body, it was difficult to recover in a short time. What was worse was that under the command of the mysterious Heaven Master, All his escape routes had been blocked. Under the lead of 10 peak Imperial Emperors, more than 50 Imperial Emperors sealed off the surroundings and started to compress space. It wouldn't be long before they trapped him in a dead end. You ants from the medium-class world, you can't even withstand a single blow. Do you think a bunch of ants like you can defy the will of heaven? On the Sword World battlefield, the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador roared with laughter. Without Araki Takashi and Shui Dai, there are no more heroes in the medium-class realm. The profound Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador rampaged through the Sword World's battlefield, unleashing a massacre that no one was his match. Under his slaughter, the Sword Realm had already begun to show signs of collapse. Right at this moment, an enormous energy fluctuation suddenly came from the battlefield. Even Suzimo subconsciously glanced over and couldn't help but tremble. 2 peak Imperial Lords from Sword World stood forward and blocked the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's path. These two were the fat and thin elders of the Sword World. They were also the 2 realm lords of the Sword World. They conjured hand seals and self-detonated their swords, detonating a sword chi world. They condensed the final sword of their lives and slashed at the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. The 2 elders of the Sword World used the most tragic method to respond to the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. Suzimo had once cultivated in the Sword World for a period of time and knew that this was a mystic technique of the Absolute Sword Tao. Sword of Despair. Once this sword was used, it would end one's life. The final part of the Sword of Despair was to sever one's cultivation path with a single strike. This mystic technique was something that even the sword cultivators of Absolute Sword Peak had never cultivated. Many sword cultivators would joke while chatting, saying that the sword cultivator senior who created this mystic technique was truly bored. Who would cultivate in such a sword Dao mystic technique that ended one's life? Even the sword cultivators of the Sword World had never seen this sword Dao mystic technique before. And now it wasn't just the sword cultivators. All the experts that were paying attention to this battle, as well as the myriad races, saw this extremely stunning sword strike that was like a moth flying into a flame. The duo's sword Dao had been sublimated to an extreme at that moment. For some reason, the sword cultivators who saw this scene were tearing up. It was the same for the elder with the iron crown. Even he did not know that his 2 old friends had secretly cultivated this sword Dao mystic technique behind his back. Perhaps they had long been prepared for this. Our lifespans are coming to an end. This strike will be the final mark we leave behind in this world. The fat elder said with a smile. The thin elder, who always wore a stoic expression, revealed a slightly stiff but extremely carefree smile at the final moment. Following that, the duo's figures were drowned in endless sword chi. Of course, saying that their lifespans were coming to an end was only an excuse. If they had succeeded in their assault on the heavens in this life, the 2 elders could have ascended to a high thousand world. With their cultivation improved, they could naturally extend their lifespans. But at the Sword World's most critical juncture, the 2 elders gave up this opportunity. They ignited their lives to defend the Sword Tao in their hearts. They would rather break than bend and press forward with indomitable will. Even if the Middle Thousand World did not have Araki Takashi or Shui Dai, it still had them. At that moment, the figures of the 2 elders attracted everyone's attention. It was also deeply engraved in the hearts of many experts. Even the experts from the Heavenly Eye race and the Golden Crow race that had just attacked the Sword World subconsciously lowered their heads at that moment. They had to admit that they were inferior to the 2 elders from the Sword World. Faced with such a sublimated strike, the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador also felt immense pressure. He could not help but roar as his eyes widened. He immediately transformed into his true body and curled his body into a tortoise shell. At the same time, he propped up a world and used his bloodline phenomenon. He released many trump cards to establish defensive barriers around him. The 2 elders' strike that ignited their lives made him sense the aura of death. He felt immense danger. Pwah, pwah, pwah. The barriers were penetrated one by the 2 long swords. These barriers were also constantly weakening the sword of desperation of the fat and thin old men. Boom. There was a loud boom. The 2 desperate strikes finally struck the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world, producing a loud boom. The entire world was shaking violently. Ka. Immediately following that, fine cracks appeared in the world as they rapidly spread. All the experts were astounded. The 2 strikes had shattered the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world. After all, the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had relied on his body and bloodline to sweep through the crowd of Empyrean lords. No one could withstand his might. But now, the destruction of the world meant that the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had lost his most powerful means. It was equivalent to severing an arm. As for the two desperate strikes, they dissipated after shattering the world. All that was left was wisps of sword chi that landed on the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's tortoise shell. There was a metallic sound before they dissipated. It was over. The mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had managed to withstand the strikes of two peak sword thearchs that ignited their lives. However, he had paid a huge price. Die. The Iron-Crowned Elder was enraged as he roared. He propped up a world as sword chi surged forward. He moved with his sword as he charged at the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. The other Empyrean lords of the Sword World also attacked. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. Only by doing so would the two elders' sacrifice not be in vain. Chapter 3194. Faced with the encirclement of the Sword Realm Emperors, the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador moved. The massive and thick tortoiseshell constantly spun in midair. The lifeblood in his body surged as massive waves surged beneath him. The ravines on the tortoiseshell emitted a resplendent divine light. Clang, clang, clang. Numerous swords struck the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's tortoiseshell, producing a series of ear-piercing sounds. Not only did the divine weapons in the hands of these sword emperors fail to penetrate the tortoiseshell, they were even sent flying. Some of the sword emperors' palms were torn apart as they bled profusely. Some of the swords were even shattered on the spot. Many of the fragments flew out and entered the body of an emperor of the sword realm. This sword emperor died on the spot. The sword realm had lost another emperor. Even the Iron-Crowned Elder's world was unable to break through the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's defenses. After all, he was a sacred beast of the Black Tortoise race. He had peerless defenses and was also an Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. Even without a world, he remained unshakable on the astral battlefield. When everyone saw this scene, despair surged in their hearts. If they could not kill the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador or break through his defenses, who in the Middle Thousand Realms could fight him? The Sword Realm Emperors were filled with grief, indignation, and indignation. The fat and thin Sword Realm Lords had ignited their lives to break through the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world, creating a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yet they were still no match for him. Ha 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 ha. You bunch of ants dare to take my life? The mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's laughter came from the massive tortoiseshell. It hummed and revealed endless mockery. I'll stand here and let you attack. Who can kill me? I'll kill you. Just as the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador said that, a loud roar came from afar. When the first word was said, the voice sounded above the Heaven Wasteland domain. When the last word was said, the person had already arrived on the battlefield of the Sword Realm. This figure attracted everyone's attention. It was an old ape. He was many times taller than Mount Meru in the heavenly realm. His head was the firmament, and his feet were the stars. His massive body nearly burst through the world. No one could ignore this figure. Even the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Emissary's expression changed. The fur on the old ape's body had long since turned white, and he seemed to be on the verge of death. However, his eyes surged with a horrifying bloody glow, and his battle intent surged into the sky. He was unparalleled. The old ape looked even older. His lifespan was exhausted in an instant. But at that instant, Elder Ape's combat strength skyrocketed, reaching an untouchable level. With a single step, he traversed billions of kilometers of space and descended on the Sword World battlefield. He raised his staff and smashed it at the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. This scene was destined to be eternally remembered. When Su Zimo and Monkey sensed the changes in the old ape, they instantly understood something. Back then, the two of them had received the inheritance of the Great Battle Emperor on the path to heaven. The battle catalog had a total of 5 levels, and the last level was called Battle Against the Nine Heavens. However, at that time, when the two of them entered the inheritance of the Battle Against the Nine Heavens, they felt an extremely terrifying battle intent. They immediately woke up and ended the inheritance. The two of them could not understand what kind of Dao technique battling the Nine Heavens was. It was only at this moment that the two of them finally understood. What the old ape released was Battle Against the Nine Heavens. Battle Against the Nine Heavens battle soul would fuse with one's body. In an instant, one's lifespan would be exhausted to raise one's combat strength to the limit. By releasing battle against the 9 heavens, it meant that one's life would be left in that instant. That instant was an eternity. Boom. There was a loud boom. Elder Ape's staff smashed into the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's tortoise shell. The massive force shattered the surrounding void, stirring up raging waves in the galaxy. Elder Ape's staff shattered. As for the thick and massive tortoise shell, it remained intact as it stood tall in the cosmos. Upon seeing this scene, the eyes of many experts dimmed. Only Elder Ape roared with laughter. Amidst his laughter, Elder Ape's figure gradually dissipated. Finally, he vanished into nothingness as his soul dissipated. The battlefield regained its calm. The atmosphere was a little odd as there was complete silence. The mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador did not appear the entire time. He did not even make a sound. If it were him, he would have mocked the old ape when he saw this scene. As the force gradually dissipated, the Imperial Lords extended their perception over and landed on the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's body. They could not help but be alarmed as their hearts palpitated. Everyone widened their eyes as disbelief suffused their faces. Although the massive tortoise shell was intact, the vitality within it had nearly dissipated. There was no mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. All that was left was a pile of tattered flesh. Everyone drew a cold gasp. Through the tortoise shell, the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador was smashed into meat paste. His body and soul were destroyed as he perished. Perhaps only Su Zimo and Monkey were not surprised by this outcome. Back then, Emperor Dojan had used battle against the 9 heavens to kill the Great Sky Lord. Although Elder Ape did not become a great emperor, the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador was still worlds apart from the Great Sky Lord. Furthermore, the fat and thin elders had ignited their vitality to destroy the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador's world. Although the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador had perished, Su Zimo did not feel any joy. He had relied on the fat and thin elders from the Sword World and Elder Ape's sacrifice to kill the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, who said that there were no more elites in the Middle World. Whoever dared to belittle the experts of this world would have to pay the price. The War of the Heavens was destined to be extremely tragic. However, when he saw this scene, Su Zimo still felt a sense of sorrow. Perhaps Elder Ape no longer had any regrets. When he was about to leave, his carefree and heroic laughter was enough to know how he felt. Elder Ape knew that he had killed the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador with a single strike. More importantly, he wanted to regain the dignity of the Sanguine Apes. Back then, in order to protect the Sanguine Apes, he had been forced to kneel in front of the Heavens Inspector Heavenly Ambassador. From that moment on, the Sanguine Apes no longer had the battle soul. They also no longer had the fearless spirit to fight against the heavens. And this strike was like a wake-up call to the Sanguine Apes. It gradually awakened the bloodthirst and fighting spirit that had been dormant for a long time. The auras of many Sanguine Ape Imperial Lords surged as their eyes glowed with a sanguine light. They charged towards the Heavenly Court's Imperial Lords. The death of the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador still affected the Heavenly Court's army significantly. In addition, the Sword World, Sanguine Ape World, and Hell's army's charge caused quite a bit of chaos on the Heavenly Court's side. However, the Heavenly Court's Imperial Lord experts still held the absolute advantage in terms of numbers and strength. After fighting for a while longer, the Heavenly Court's lords gradually stabilized their footing. Although they no longer had an unstoppable pinnacle Imperial Lord like the mysterious Heavenly Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, it was only a matter of time before the Heavenly Court's army wiped out the Sword World and Sanguine Ape World's Imperial Lords. End of this chapter. Chapter 3195. Seeing the fat and thin elders and the Blood Ape Realm Lord sacrificing themselves to kill the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Emissary, many Imperial Emperors in the 3,000 domains were moved. The heroism of facing death with great passion caused slight ripples to appear in their hearts that had long been tranquil like an ancient well. The blood in many Imperial Emperors' bodies seemed to become a little hot. Some Imperial Emperors subconsciously clenched their fists. Some Imperial Emperors took a step forward as if they wanted to do something. An Imperial Emperor suddenly said, "Actually, if it weren't for Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Blood Butterfly in this life, we wouldn't be able to stay out of this and would be forced to be involved in this war." Since ancient times, this had been the case for several wars of the heavens. Even if they wanted to stay out of it, the Heavenly Court would force them to take sides and make a choice. It was the same in this life. Originally they only had two endings. Either they would be forced by the heavenly court to fight against the army of hell, Ashura's army. Or they would be refined by the lord of the underworld and turned into lonely graves. Another imperial emperor sighed. Actually, it was the Sword Realm, Blood Ape Realm, Great Wasteland Realm, and Heaven Wasteland Realm who took on everything for us. Originally, this was a turmoil that swept through the 3,000 domains and affected all living beings. However, at this moment, it was the imperial emperors of the Sword Realm and Heaven Wasteland Realm who blocked the Heavenly Court's army for the 3,000 domains and all living beings. It was also because of this that they had the choice and opportunity to stay out of it. An imperial emperor looked up in the direction of the Heavenly Court with a guilty expression and murmured softly, "Great Emperor Araki Takashi established his Tao to protect the common people. Now he is fighting against Great Emperor Blood Butterfly and several lords of the Heavenly Court, and we don't know if he is alive or dead, just to break the shackles that have bound us for countless years. What are we doing? We're watching and waiting. We want to wait until the outcome of the battle of the Heavenly Court is decided before making a choice. If the Heavenly Court wins, we can also avoid the disaster and not be implicated. If the Heavenly Court loses, we can naturally ascend to the vast 1,000 domains." This was what most imperial emperors were thinking. However, at this moment someone had said it out loud. That monarch smiled and said, "We're just a little selfish. There's nothing wrong with that. After all, no one wants to die." After a pause, the imperial emperor expert stopped smiling and asked, "But let's ask ourselves, if the Heavenly Court wins in the end, can we really live the rest of our lives with a clear conscience? If the Heavenly Court is defeated, can we really ascend to the greater world with a clear conscience?" The imperial emperors fell silent. However, it seemed that someone had already made a decision. The battlefield of Heaven Wasteland Domain was even more dangerous than that of the Sword World, and the situation was even more critical. The Sword World no longer had the mysterious Sky Inspector Heavenly Ambassador, but the Heaven Wasteland Domain still had young Master Shen Tian. Even though Su Zimo was holding back more than 50 imperial emperors, the Heavenly Court still had 600 to 700 imperial emperors left. The Heaven Wasteland Domain could not resist at all. Even if a peak sovereign emperor could not defeat a great perfection sovereign emperor and was severely injured, it would be difficult for them to die immediately. Only when a peerless imperial emperor encountered a peak sovereign emperor would his life be in danger. And ordinary imperial emperors would not be unharmed in such a battle between emperors. The casualties were the greatest. The number of ordinary imperial emperors of Heaven Wasteland Domain was rising rapidly. On the other side, with the cooperation of young Master Shen Tian and the 50 imperial emperors of the Heavenly Court, they had already surrounded Su Zimo in a void. There was no way for him to escape. The distance between the two sides was extremely close. As long as young Master Shen Tian gave the order, Su Zimo would be killed on the spot. At this moment, a sorrowful cry came from the direction of Heaven Wasteland Domain. Su Zimo seemed to have sensed something. His heart seemed to have suddenly contracted, as if it was grabbed by a pair of invisible hands, making him unable to breathe. He abruptly turned around and looked over. On the chaotic battlefield of Heaven Wasteland Domain, a blood-stained figure had his chest pierced and was sent flying. The vitality in his body dissipated and his primordial spirit dimmed. He could no longer live. Su Zimo's mind was blown. He was stunned and his lips trembled slightly as he muttered, "Human Emperor, husband." In Heaven Wasteland Domain, immortal King Ling Long's eyes were red from crying. She shouted and rushed out of Heaven Wasteland Domain's great array. Feng Cantian, Lin Xuanji, and the others hurriedly acted but still could not stop immortal King Ling Long. She used the 9 palace subtle steps, and rushed into the battlefield of imperial emperors. Ling Long was only an immortal king. She was almost courting death by entering the battlefield of emperors. The residual force from the collision of any imperial emperors could kill her. And at this moment she seemed to have forgotten about the danger. There was only one person in her eyes. Father, mother? Lin Lei's eyes were filled with tears. He wanted to rush out as well but was held back by Feng Cantian. Lin Luo was also stopped by Lin Xuanji. Feng Santian's face was pale. He clenched his fists and his body trembled uncontrollably. He was extremely sad. He and Lin Zhan had known each other since Heaven Wasteland Domain and had fought side by side countless times until now. Lin Zhan was his best brother. In his heart, Lin Zhan had an irreplaceable position. He even wanted to rush out like immortal King Ling Long and run to Lin Zhan's side. If they were going to die, they would die together. But Lin Zhan looked over and shook his head slightly. Then he looked at Lin Lei and Lin Luo. At that moment, Feng Cantian suddenly calmed down. There was no need for words between them. They already knew each other's thoughts. Lin Zhan was worried about Lin Lei and Lin Luo. Feng Cantian could only suppress the sadness in his heart and hold Lin Lei tightly, protecting him and not letting him leave Heaven Wasteland domain. Lin Luo looked at her mother's back and cried silently. Her face was already full of tears. She knew that her mother had not forgotten the danger. Her mother knew that it was dangerous and she did not intend to continue living. She wanted to accompany her father and leave together. Immortal King Ling Long rushed into the battlefield of emperors recklessly and hugged the wounded Lin Zhan tightly in her arms. Her tears were full of heartache and reluctance. Why did you run out? It was so dangerous. Lin Zhan looked at Immortal King Ling Long gently. As he spoke, blood flowed from his mouth. The blood was dazzling red. Didn't you promise me that you would come back? Immortal King Ling Long felt that the person in her arms was getting colder and colder. She hugged Lin Zhan tighter and tighter as she cried and asked. Ling Long, I can't continue to accompany you. Lin Zhan sighed and his aura became weaker. At the same time, young Master Shen Tian waved his hand and ordered 50 Imperial Emperors to attack at the same time. They wanted to kill Su Zimo completely. However, their attacks all missed when they landed on Su Zimo. Su Zimo seemed to have disappeared from his original spot. His entire body escaped into the void and entered an extremely strange state. Void. Many Imperial Emperors had never seen such a technique before and were slightly stunned. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Su Zimo released the ancient and modern battle. He burned his lifespan and unleashed his strength to the extreme, rushing in the direction of Heaven Wasteland domain. There was a peak Imperial Emperor guarding in each of the 10 directions. Su Zimo disregarded everything and released his bloodline phenomenon, 5 Grotto Heavens and all his trump cards. He directly rushed over. Boom. This peak Imperial Emperor of the Heavenly Courts attacked and almost instantly shattered Su Zimo's 5 Grotto Heavens. The bloodline phenomenon also shattered. The 100,000 feet tall ancient and modern battle soul shook violently. It didn't last long before it collapsed. Su Zimo was also severely injured. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. His back was torn, revealing a huge palm print. The surrounding flesh was a mess. Su Zimo seemed to be unaware. His eyes were red as he broke through the encirclement at the cost of serious injuries. He burned his lifespan and sped towards Heaven Wasteland domain. He was Qinglian, a rank 12 creation realm cultivator. His blood might be able to save the human emperor. Seeing this scene, young Master Shen Tian sneered. Although Su Zimo had broken out of his encirclement, he was also severely injured. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. They chased after him. Su Zimo wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Young Master Shen Tian's figure moved, and he led 50 Imperial Emperors to follow closely behind. Big Brother Lin. Su Zimo rushed forward and cut his wrist with a backhand sword. He brought it to Lin Zhan's mouth and said in a trembling voice, "Drink, quick." At the same time, he released the lotus finger and injected vitality into Lin Zhan's body. But Lin Zhan's body was already in tatters. When his vitality entered, it couldn't stay at all and quickly dissipated. Qinglian's blood flowed into Lin Zhan's body, but there was no reaction. It only barely kept Lin Zhan alive. Su Zimo's heart gradually sank. To him, Lin Zhan wasn't just an emperor, a senior and a good friend. Lin Zhan was the human emperor and the person he respected the most, who had led the human race of Tianhuang region to defeat the primordial 9 races, walked out of that dark and tragic period, and created a glorious era that belonged to the human race. Who was the one who still cared about the human race of Tianhuang region after ascending to the higher world. He even risked his life to forcefully descend to the lower world to save the human race from danger and turn the world upside down. The human emperor was a symbol of Tianhuang region. It was also a kind of faith. But now, this human emperor who had once dominated the world and fought for his entire life was about to die in the War of the Heavens. Su Zimo didn't want to believe it. He even hoped that everything at this moment was just a dream. Zimo, don't force yourself. Lin Zhan smiled and a blush appeared on his face. It was as if he had a momentary recovery of consciousness. He said, although I didn't ascend to the higher world, this life can be considered vigorous. I look up to the world and have a clear conscience. It's just that I can't continue to fight with you. Su Zimo's eyes reddened. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. Looking up to the world and having a clear conscience. This was the life of the human emperor. Lin Zhan looked at immortal King Ling Long and said gently, Ling Long, I can't protect you from now on. I'll leave Lei, and Luo, to you. Immortal King Ling Long's heart was filled with sorrow. She opened her mouth slightly as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't bear to. She knew that Lin Zhan only had one purpose for entrusting Lin Lei and Lin Luo to her, and that was to let her live. Looking at the dying Lin Zhan, Immortal King Ling Long couldn't bear to refuse. She only nodded with tears in her eyes. In the end, Lin Zhan smiled and slowly closed his eyes. The human emperor had fallen. Heaven and earth mourned. Chapter 3196. Too many imperial emperors had fallen since the start of the battle. Even experts like the Lord of the Heavenly Courts and the Lord of the Underworld had died. Lin Zhan was just one of the most ordinary imperial emperors. He was not eye-catching. His death would not shock the thousands of races in the 3,000 worlds. However, to the people of Tianhuang mainland, this was an unbearable pain. Su Zimo was an unbearable pain. He clutched his chest as a sharp pain came from his heart. Only the warmth in his arms seemed to be able to alleviate some of his pain. It was the jade pendant that the evil the Arch had given him. This jade pendant could not be placed in his storage bag, so he had always kept it in his arms. Unknowingly, this jade pendant had become warm. Su Zimo had been surrounded by many imperial emperors and had no time to be distracted. He did not pay much attention to the changes in the jade pendant. The battle between the Thearchs was still bloody and cruel. It did not stop just because of Lin Zhan's death. Meanwhile, Immortal King Ling Long hugged Lin Zhan's body that was gradually turning cold. She could die at any time in the battlefield. The Arch North Kuan, the Arch South Rock, Frost Dragon Empress, and the others led many imperial emperors toward Immortal King Ling Long and the others, doing their best to protect them. However, they could not hold on for long. Young Master Shen Tian had already charged over with 50 imperial emperors. The Frost Dragon Empress stood out and charged toward young Master Shen Tian. The two of them exchanged blows. In an instant, the Frost Dragon Empress was sent flying by young Master Shen Tian. Countless dragon scales fell off, and her huge dragon body fell heavily into the starry sky, covered in wounds. The Frost Dragon Empress had long passed her peak and did not have much lifespan left. After this battle, she was already at the end of her life. Now she was severely injured by young Master Shen Tian. She struggled for a while before collapsing weakly. Gradually she stopped breathing. The Frost Dragon Empress was dead. Araki Takashi died. Young Master Shen Tian charged forward. The blood in his body surged, supporting a world that enveloped Su Zimo. Su Zimo was still in a daze. He had yet to recover from the scene of Lin Zhan's death. Zimo? Araki Takashi. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they turned pale with fright and cried out one after another. In Heaven Wasteland Domain, one figure after another rose into the air. Some of them were only at the True Spirit Realm and Immortal King Realm, but they also recklessly rushed toward the battlefield of the Emperor Realm. The Nine-Tailed Demon Monarch, Divine Elephant Demon Monarch, Baizé Demon Monarch, and other Imperial Emperors of the Great Wasteland Domain also rushed toward Su Zimo. Young Master Shen Tian's world was not only going to devour Su Zimo, but it was also going to devour Immortal Emperor Ling Long and Lin Zhan who were with Su Zimo. Su Zimo's mind shook and he suddenly woke up. Lin Zhan had already perished, but Immortal King Ling Long mustn't die. Even if he had to risk his life, he would protect Immortal King Ling Long. However, his current condition was indeed not good. Su Zimo was severely injured and personally witnessed Lin Zhan's death. His mind was damaged. He was in a daze. He only hoped that the scene in front of him was just a dream. He only subconsciously stood up and stood in front of Immortal King Ling Long. In this daze he struck out a palm at young Master Shen Tian. There was no bloodline phenomenon, no 5 grotto heavens and no mystic arts. This palm looked weak and powerless, without any momentum to speak of. Ha! Young Master Shen Tian sneered. Just as he had expected, Su Zimo was already an arrow at the end of its flight. You can't even defeat these peak Imperial Emperors under my command. What do you have to fight me? Young Master Shen Tian's eyes were like torches as he sneered. The Nine-Tailed Demon Monarch, Divine Elephant Demon Monarch, Baizé Demon Monarch, and the others ignored the attacks of the Heavenly Court's Imperial Emperors behind them and unleashed a series of killing moves at young Master Shen Tian. No one can save the person I want to kill. Young Master Shen Tian shouted, but he remained unmoved. He was absolutely confident that he could attack calmly. After killing Su Zimo, he could block the attacks of the Nine-Tailed Demon Monarch and the others in time. Just as Su Zimo's palm touched his world, young Master Shen Tian's expression suddenly froze. He felt an unusual throbbing in his heart. It flashed past as if it was an illusion. The chaotic and bloody battlefield seemed to have suddenly disappeared. He seemed to be floating on a clear lake, rippling with the waves as he looked at the brilliant galaxy in the sky. His heart fell into an unprecedented peace. For a moment, young Master Shen Tian was in a daze. He was intoxicated and forgot to return. On the battlefield, under everyone's gaze, young Master Shen Tian's figure suddenly stopped. For some reason, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. The terrifying world around him was silently disintegrating under Su Zimo's palm. Galaxy Dream Realm. Young Master Shen Tian seemed to have thought of something. His body shuddered as he suddenly woke up. This was the evil Thearka's Tao technique. The reason why the Lord of Vermilion Heaven died was because he was severely injured by the evil Thearka's secret technique at the start of the battle and was at a disadvantage. He could not break free from the evil Thearka's pursuit. However, the Galaxy Dream Realm was filled with flaws and was far from the dream realm created by the evil the Arch. Otherwise, given young Master Shen Tian's strength, he would not have been able to break free on his own. It was merely a coincidence that Su Zimo released that secret technique. Wu Dao's original body was once dragged into the dream realm by the evil the Arch. He lived for an entire lifetime and underwent countless tests. In other words, the evil Thearka's Tao technique remained in his body for an entire lifetime. He witnessed the evil the Arch releasing the Galaxy Dream Realm with his own eyes. More importantly, when he fell into a trance earlier on, he gathered all his thoughts and hoped that everything before him was a dream. Coupled with the enhancement of the jade pendant, his palm contained a wisp of the evil Thearka's Dream Realm Tao technique. Just a wisp was enough for young Master Shen Tian to suffer. Even though he had managed to break free from the Galaxy Dreamland that was full of flaws, his world had already dissipated in the Dreamland. More importantly, the killing moves of the nine-tailed demon the Arch, the divine elephant demon the Arch, and the other imperial emperors had already descended on him. Bang, bang, bang. The divine weapons and secret techniques of the nine-tailed demon the Arch, the divine elephant demon the Arch, and the others all landed on young Master Shen Tian's vital points. Young Master Shen Tian was trapped in the dream realm. Without the protection of his world, his limbs and head did not have time to hide in the turtle shell and were exposed outside. He became the target of the nine-tailed demon the Arch and the other imperial emperors. Even the nine-tailed demon the Arch, the divine elephant demon the Arch, and the others did not expect this to happen. Even without the protection of the turtle shell, young Master Shen Tian's physical body was still extremely powerful. The divine weapons of the nine-tailed demon the Arch and the other imperial emperors smashed down on young Master Shen Tian's head. In the blink of an eye, he struck dozens of times before his head was shattered. In a battle between peak imperial emperors, a moment of distraction could determine the outcome. Furthermore, in such a chaotic battle, young Master Shen Tian was trapped in the dream realm. If he stood rooted to the ground, he was destined to die. Young Master Shen Tian never dreamed that he would be the first to arrive. Not only did he fail to kill Su Zimo, but he also lost his life. He had just woken up from his daze when he felt a sharp pain in his head and his vision turned black. Before he could even cry out, young Master Shen Tian's head was smashed and his essence spirit was destroyed in front of everyone. He died on the spot. Chapter 3197. The successive deaths of the mysterious Sky Inspector, Heavenly Ambassador and young Master Shen Tian did not resolve the crisis faced by the Sword Realm and Heaven Wasteland domain. It only dealt a significant blow to the morale of the Heavenly Courts. However, this action also completely angered the Heavenly Courts army, and their attacks became even more frenzied. More and more Imperial Emperors died on the battlefield. Not only ordinary Imperial Emperors, but peerless Imperial Emperors also began to die, and even some peak Imperial Emperors died under the chaotic siege. The Divine Elephant Demon Emperor of the Great Wasteland Domain died. The Nine-Tailed Demon Emperor who charmed all living beings also died. This Emperor Realm war became more and more tragic. The blood of Imperial Emperors dyed thousands of miles of the galaxy red. Su Zimo was severely injured previously, and he released an evil Emperor Tao technique. The power of his primordial spirit was almost exhausted, and he was extremely weak. The Sword Realm was in danger. The Heaven Wasteland Domain was in danger. At that time, the Blood Ape Realm, Kunping Realm, Great Wasteland Domain, Flower Realm, Dragon Realm, and many other realms would suffer the endless slaughter of the Heavenly Court's army. A peak Imperial Emperor from the Heavenly Court attacked and killed another Imperial Emperor powerhouse. He sneered and said, "You ants from the medium-class world want to fight against the Heavenly Court? The Heavenly Courts is where the Heavenly Courts are, you will lose for sure. A bunch of animals, you want to jump out of the cage, this is the price you have to pay." The Iron Crown Elder's hair was disheveled, and he was covered in wounds. He stood with his sword and shouted, "Even if you destroy the Sword Realm today, there will be people in the Heaven Wasteland domain who will stand up and attack the Heavenly Courts in the future. One day they will crush the Heavenly Courts." Emperor Kuan of the North also roared, "Our blood will not be spilled in vain." Ah! A Heavenly Courts Emperor laughed, "Whoever dares to stand up, the Heavenly Courts will destroy them, even if it means destroying the 3,000 realms and killing all the middle worlds until there are no more living beings. Your blood will not be spilled in vain?" Another Heavenly Courts Emperor also sneered, "Other than your realms, who else in the 3,000 realms dares to go against the heavens?" Me. Another figure flew out of the Wasteland domain, bathed in flames, like a god of war, and sped into the battlefield. This was the Wasteland Lord. Behind him, there were several Imperial Emperors from Wudong Realm following closely behind. Their gazes were resolute. Back then, because Great Emperor Araki Takashi had appeared to quell the voodoo poison, the Wudong Realm had been spared. Wudong Realm would always remember this kindness in its heart. "Count me in." A loud shout came from the direction of the barbarian world. The Lord of the barbarian world soared into the sky and charged toward the starry sky battlefield with 2 axes in his hands. His expression was resolute. "And me." A Celestial Dipper Realm's Imperial Emperor stepped forward. "And me. And me. And us." One after another, voices rang out, resounding through the heavens and earth, reverberating endlessly. One after another, Imperial Emperors flew up from the various realms of the middle world and rushed to the battlefield without hesitation. In some realms there was only one Imperial Emperor. This Imperial Emperor no longer hesitated. In some realms, some Imperial Emperors had been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for an opportunity to ascend to the Great Kiliacosm. But at this moment, they chose to give up this opportunity and rush to the battlefield. The fat and thin elders had ignited their lives, the old ape's fighting spirit, the death of Lin Zhan, the 9-tailed demon emperor, the divine elephant demon emperor, and the other Imperial Emperors had finally awakened the passion that had been dormant in the middle world for many years. Although those who held the torch for everyone had frozen to death in the wind and snow, the flames that had been ignited had finally illuminated this world. More and more figures soared into the sky from all over the middle world, advancing forward courageously. This scene was extremely spectacular. Those voices were hot-blooded and impassioned, and they were powerful and resonant. Those figures were like shooting stars, shining with boundless light and cutting through the sky. The expressions of the Heavenly Court's Imperial Emperors became somewhat grave. It was just that there were not many Imperial Emperors from the Sword Realm, Heaven Wasteland Domain, and Blood Ape Realm added together, so they were not much of a threat to them. But if the Imperial Emperors of the Middle World joined forces, it was a force that could not be ignored. On the battlefield of the Heavenly Court, the battle between the great emperors was still ongoing, but both sides had already reached the limit of their bodies, and there was not much strength left. They were only relying on their Dao hearts and willpower. The final victor would depend on which side's willpower was stronger. Under the suppression of Wu Dao's true body, the Master of Dark Heaven and the Master of Dark Heaven were already at the end of their rope. Even the fists of Wu Dao's true body were badly mangled, revealing pieces of pale finger bones. But he did not seem to feel any pain. He raised his fists and continuously attacked the Master of Dark Heaven and the Master of Dark Heaven, as if he did not know fatigue. Boom. Finally, accompanied by a loud bang, the tortoise shell on the back of the Master of Dark Heaven was actually smashed by Wu Dao's true body. Countless fragments of the tortoise shell sank into the body of the Master of Dark Heaven, riddling his body with holes and causing blood to gush out. Ah! The Master of Dark Heaven let out a miserable cry. He was from the sacred beast Black Tortoise clan, and his defense was unparalleled. Ever since he descended from the greater world and entered the heavenly courts, even though he had experienced several War of the Heavens, when had he ever suffered such a serious injury? Of course, Wu Dao's true body was not in a good state either. The tortoise shell contained a huge recoil force that also shattered his arm. Wu Dao's true body had consumed a lot of qi and blood. In such a battle, it was impossible for him to regrow his arm even if he wanted to. But he still did not stop attacking. Even if his arm was shattered, there was no change in his eyes. The purple flames burned brighter and brighter. Kill? Wu Dao's true body shouted and took a step forward. Whoosh! Plow heaven's stride. Without the protection of the tortoise shell, this step directly created a huge bloody ravine on the body of the Master of Dark Heaven. Just one step and the Master of Dark Heaven was almost cut into two. Boom! Wu Dao's true body took a second step. The Master of Dark Heaven's head was instantly crushed by Wu Dao's true body, and his primordial spirit was destroyed. The Master of Dark Heaven was dead. At this time, the Dao seal of the heavenly courts was almost destroyed by the Styx River. After killing the Master of Dark Heaven, even if he could come back from the dead, he would descend to the greater world and it would be difficult for him to return to the middle world. In the battle just now, because of the Styx River, 9 of the 10 gates of hell had collapsed. Although the gate of Avicii was still intact, Wu Dao's true body no longer had the strength and primordial spirit to summon the gate of Avicii. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Master of Dark Heaven dragged his severely injured body and turned to escape. Even if he was facing the one-armed Wu Dao's true body, he still did not dare to fight with him. In this battle, the Master of Dark Heaven was scared out of his wits. Wu Dao's true body was faster. In a few steps he caught up with the Master of Dark Heaven. He stretched out his only arm, grabbed the Master of Dark Heaven's dragon tail, and suddenly exerted force. Whoosh! Wu Dao's true body lifted the Master of Dark Heaven's body, drew a huge arc in the air, and slammed him heavily on the heavenly courts. Boom! There was an earth-shattering sound. Dust mixed with dragon blood spread everywhere. It was bloody and tragic. The Master of Dark Heaven let out a sorrowful cry, and his dragon body twitched unconsciously. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight. With this heavy fall, more than half of the dragon bones in his body were broken. The Master of Dark Heaven coughed up blood. His mind was blank and he was dizzy. Before he could react, a shadow loomed over him. Wu Dao's true body descended from the sky, and his feet stomped down hard. Splat! The dragon's head was crushed and blood splattered everywhere. The Master of Dark Heaven was dead. Chapter 3198. 2 of the 6 lords of the heavenly courts were gone. At this point of the battle, the situation was completely tilted. The remaining 4 lords of the heavenly courts were shocked when they saw that. They realized that the heavenly courts might not be able to defend anymore. The single-armed Wu Dao's true body was covered in blood and the purple flames in his eyes burned brighter as he strode towards the 4 lords of the heavenly courts with a torrential aura. Before he even arrived, a tragic aura surged over. Who could match Wu Dao's true body with the might of killing 3 lords of the heavenly courts in a row? Wu Dao's true body arrived beside Dai Yu and raised his single arm, punching towards Lord Yu Heaven. Dai Yu attacked at the same time and slapped down with her fair palm. Bang! Bang! Lord Yu Heaven could not even gain the slightest advantage against Dai Yu, let alone the combined forces of Wu Dao's true body and Dai Yu. Poof! A scarlet blood mist burst forth from Lord Yu Heaven's body. His clothes were torn and his body was filled with cracks. It was a shocking sight. Wu Dao's true body and Dai Yu advanced once more and attacked consecutively. In less than 10 breaths, Lord Yu Heaven's head was shattered by Dai Yu's palm and his essence spirit was destroyed. Lord Yu Heaven was dead. When the remaining 3 lords of the heavenly courts saw that, they realized that it was over. However, they did not have much fear in their hearts. Even if they died, they would be reborn in the greater world. However, now that the heavenly courts were lost, the Fiend Lord, Evil Emperor and Nirvana Ghost Mother would return to the greater world. That was a huge problem for them. Wu Dao's true body and Dai Yu turned around and arrived beside the Evil Emperor. In just 3 breaths, the Sun Heaven Lord was killed. Fiend Lord, Evil Emperor, Ghost Mother. Although the heavenly court's defeat was certain, the Great Heaven Lord was still fearless and said slowly, "I'll wait for you guys in the greater world." Pausing for a moment, the Great Heaven Lord's bloodshot gaze landed on Wu Dao's true body as he said coldly, "And you, Araki Takashi?" Wu Dao's true body did not reply and attacked even more ferociously. There was less and less time left for him. He had to get rid of the remaining 2 masters of the heavenly court before the crisis struck. The Great Sky Sovereign and the Great Sky Sovereign couldn't hold on for long. They were besieged by Wu Dao's original body and the other 4. The heavenly court was finally destroyed in this era. The Demon Lord panted heavily as he looked up at the sky. Even with his temperament, there was a trace of excitement in the depths of his eyes. After waiting for so many years, they were finally going to return to the greater world. After the battle ended, Dai heaved a sigh of relief and subconsciously looked towards Wu Dao's original body. At this moment, Wu Dao's main body had a solemn expression. Dai seemed to have thought of something and wanted to walk towards Wu Dao's original body. "Don't come over." Wu Dao's original body shouted and moved, quickly distancing himself from Dai. At this moment, the Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, Brahma Ghost Mother, and Dai sensed something and their expressions changed. Above the heavenly court, in the direction of the great wide world, they suddenly felt an extremely terrifying pressure descend. This pressure had already far exceeded their imagination. Snap! There was a deafening bang that shook heaven and earth. The entire middle world was shaking and trembling, as though it could not withstand this pressure and was about to collapse. Boom! Another loud bang sounded. The sky above the heavenly court was pierced by a terrifying force, creating a gigantic hole. The expressions of the Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother changed starkly. That sky was the law barrier between the middle world and the greater world. But now this force actually pierced through the law barrier. A huge hole was forcefully punched through the sky of the middle world. Back then, there was a great war that almost destroyed the three realms in the greater world. Only then did the law barrier between the middle world and the greater world shatter, causing them to fall from the greater world. Several eras had passed. Although the law barrier had not recovered to its original state, it was more or less repaired. But now the law barrier was pierced once again. Although it was not as destructive as the Great War, the terror of this force was enough to shock the Fiend Master and the other two. This force pierced through the law barrier, breaking through the world and consumed a lot of energy. After descending in the heavenly court, it still contained a terrifying power that could not be resisted. A dazzling brilliance blasted towards Wu Dao's true body. It contained the aura of death, wanting to erase him from this world. The Fiend Master, Evil Emperor, and Brahma Ghost Mother all subconsciously retreated, afraid that they would be affected. This force was too strong. If it landed on them, they would not be able to resist it. Dai subconsciously went forward, but it was too late. Wu Dao's true body could not avoid it. Not to mention he was already exhausted and did not have much combat strength left. Even if he was in peak condition, he could not avoid this brilliance. This brilliance contained a supreme Dao technique that far surpassed his cultivation realm. Moreover, it had completely locked onto his aura. He could not dodge it all. This brilliance was dazzling, attracting the attention of countless experts in the middle world. On the battlefield of the middle world, there was a trace of stagnation. Many imperial emperors felt their hearts skip a beat. They subconsciously looked up and saw such a brilliance breaking through the sky, dispersing the fog, and descending on the head of Wu Dao's true body. Many experts in the middle world did not know what had happened. However, they could all feel the terrifying power contained in this brilliance. This power could almost destroy everything. This nightmare that had haunted him for many years finally erupted. A great calamity had descended. Wu Dao's true body did not intend to wait for death. Even if there was only a trace of survival, he had to fight with all his might. This Wu Dao's true body had an extraordinary meaning to Su Zimo. Just before this brilliance descended, Wu Dao's true body raised the hell-suppressing cauldron with one arm and hung it above his head. Boom! There was a loud bang. Under everyone's watchful eyes, this invincible the arch-divine weapon was instantly shattered into pieces by this brilliance. The difference in strength was too great. It was almost as easy as crushing dry weeds. Countless fragments of the hell-suppressing cauldron poured into Wu Dao's true body, riddling it with holes. His only arm was also instantly shattered, turning into a cloud of blood mist. This brilliance did not stop. It continued to descend. Under the bombardment of this brilliance, Wu Dao's true body also exploded, flesh and blood flying everywhere. All the beings in the middle world widened their eyes. Their faces were full of shock as they watched this scene in disbelief. What had happened? In the heavenly court, only Blood Butterfly the Arch, the Demon Lord, the Evil the Arch, and the Brahma Ghost Mother were left. The heavenly court's leader was nowhere to be seen. It seemed that the war of the heavens in this life had already been won. But what was with this brilliance? The Arch Araki Takashi had fallen? Could this be a punishment from the heavens? Could it be that the heavens were warning them that even if they succeeded, they would have to pay a heavy price? After shattering the hell-suppressing cauldron and Wu Dao's true body, the brilliance did not dissipate. In the vast cloud of blood mist, an inconspicuous dark ancient mirror fell into the starry sky. In the chaotic battlefield, almost no one noticed it. However, the ray of light only paused for a moment before it followed closely behind and bombarded the dark ancient mirror. Chapter 3199. Under the impact of the light, the prison-suppressing cauldron and Wu Dao's physical body were shattered. Naturally, his martial soul could not withstand it. However, when Wu Dao took out the prison-suppressing cauldron, he had expected this outcome. Therefore, his martial soul flickered and escaped into the netherworld treasure mirror. As long as his martial soul was not destroyed, he would have a chance to make a comeback. Legend had it that the netherworld treasure mirror was the weapon of the Lord of Hell. However, after Wu Dao's martial soul had entered the Emperor realm, he still could not refine it for his own use. Wu Dao's martial soul speculated that the netherworld treasure mirror might have an even greater origin. In the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror, there was a hidden consciousness. It could be the artifact spirit of this treasure. Now Wu Dao's martial soul was hiding in the netherworld treasure mirror. He wanted to use this treasure to hide his aura and avoid the crisis from the Great Thousand World. Unfortunately, the light was extremely sensitive and continued to chase after him. Wu Dao's martial soul did not escape. Under the pursuit of the light, he could not escape at all. Now he could only place his hopes on the artifact spirit in the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror. Now he was bound to the netherworld treasure mirror. If the light wanted to kill him, it would have to break the netherworld treasure mirror first. The artifact spirit in the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror seemed to have sensed the danger. In the depths of the netherworld treasure mirror, in the darkness, a scarlet dot suddenly appeared. Wu Dao's martial soul saw it clearly. It was a drop of blood. Boom. There was no time to think. The light from the Great Thousand World had already landed on the netherworld treasure mirror. There was a loud explosion, causing the middle world to shake continuously. Countless stars around were shattered and turned into dust. The netherworld treasure mirror was already full of cracks. After being hit by the light, it fell rapidly and could shatter at any time. Wu Dao's martial soul, who was hiding in the netherworld treasure mirror, was also shaken to the point of losing consciousness. However, he faintly felt that most of the power in the light was not dissolved by the netherworld treasure mirror. Instead, it was blocked by the drop of blood in the netherworld treasure mirror. The netherworld treasure mirror might be an emperor divine weapon, similar to the prison-suppressing cauldron and other divine weapons. It was because of that drop of blood that the netherworld treasure mirror had undergone a qualitative change. What kind of creature's blood actually contained such terrifying power? Just one drop was enough to block most of the power contained in the light. Although that beam of light didn't have much power left after piercing through the barrier between the three realms, it was still enough to destroy everything in this dimensional realm. Ah! The drop of blood let out a scream of anger, unwillingness, and resentment. This scream caused Wu Dao's martial soul to feel even more pain. It was clearly just a scream, but as his consciousness blurred, he seemed to hear the voices of countless living beings mixed together. Wu Dao's true body could only feel that he was falling uncontrollably along with the cracked netherworld treasure mirror. When he gradually regained his consciousness, he discovered that he was already in the Avicii Great Hell. The light from the Greater Thousand Worlds still hadn't given up. It seemed that as long as Wu Dao's original body didn't die, it would continue to chase after him until he was completely obliterated. Rumble. This beam of light descended on Taiwei Mountain. In an instant, it raced Taiwei Mountain to the ground. The terrifying power pierced through the Avicii Great Hell and continued to penetrate deeper, completely piercing through the Avicii Great Hell. This hell was condensed by the Emperor of Infinity with his own flesh and blood. For countless years, even a powerhouse like the Demon Lord couldn't do anything about it. But in this life, it was easily penetrated by the power from the Greater Thousand World. With a boom, the netherworld treasure mirror couldn't withstand this power and completely shattered. Poof! The drop of blood in the netherworld treasure mirror suddenly exploded, blocking in front of the light. Wu Dao's original body didn't have time to think. He took this opportunity to escape into the dry well of the Avicii Great Hell. This dry well led to the infernal world. That drop of blood definitely couldn't block the power contained in the light. At most, it could only delay it for a moment. Wu Dao's original body had to take advantage of this time to escape into the infernal world. Of course, the infernal world alone couldn't block that light at all. Wu Dao's original body thought of the Nether River. To be precise, it was the deepest part of the Nether River. Dai Yu had once said that there was a great terror in the depths of the Nether River. Back then, when he was a quasi-emperor, he came to the Nether River to cultivate in seclusion. He had once tried to cross the Nether River to explore the secrets in the depths of the Nether River. As he walked further and further, he also felt the terror from the depths of the Nether River. Later, a cold wind suddenly blew from the depths of the Nether River. The 6 supreme flames that Wu Dao cultivated in his domain were all extinguished in an instant. Even his martial soul flame became swaying and flickering, sometimes bright and sometimes dark. At the same time, an uncontrollable and irresistible sense of fear rose in the heart of Wu Dao's original body, making his scalp tingle. At that time, the situation in the vast wilderness was grim. Wu Dao's original body didn't dare to take the risk, so he gave up the idea of exploring and retreated halfway. At this moment, there was a great calamity from the greater thousand world chasing after him. Wu Dao's original body couldn't care less. The only place he could think of that might be able to resist that light was the depths of the Nether River. In the blink of an eye, Wu Dao's original body descended on the infernal world. His martial soul flickered and instantly descended above the Nether River. Wu Dao's original body looked at the depths of the Nether River. Almost without hesitation he sped all the way forward. When he arrived at the area where the Nether River was, he could no longer teleport. All Dao techniques seemed to have lost their effect here. He could feel that the light had not given up. It had already shattered the blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror and chased him to the infernal world. The infernal world was gloomy and dark, filled with nether chi everywhere. Wu Dao's original body's martial soul had already escaped to the sky above the Nether River. Normally, with the obstruction of the 9 springs of hell, it was enough to cover all traces. However, that light seemed to contain some kind of spirituality. After pausing for a moment, it directly shattered the Acheron of hell and went against the flow, going straight to Wu Dao's original body in the sky above the Nether River. There was no way for Wu Dao's original body to escape from the Acheron of heaven. This ray of light was going to kill them all. Wu Dao's original body was only left with a weak martial soul. As he continued to go deeper into the Nether River, he felt more and more pressure, and the sense of fear grew deeper and deeper. Although his martial soul had reached the Emperor realm, it was far better than the last time. However, after the War of the Heavens he had exhausted too much. His martial soul was already at the end of its tether, and its flame was weak. If another gust of cold wind blew from the depths of the Nether River, his martial soul would probably be extinguished on the spot. Even so, Wu Dao's original body still did not stop. He could only gamble. Everything in the depths of the Nether River was unknown. Perhaps he still had a chance of survival. However, if he stopped, that light would not give him any chance and would kill him on the spot. However, compared to the speed of that light, Wu Dao's original body's martial soul was too slow. The killing intent behind him was getting stronger and stronger. If he continued to escape like this, he was afraid that before he reached the depths of the Nether River, that light would have already caught up and killed him. Chapter 3200. The beam of light chased up to the sky above the underworld river. The originally calm and dark river water seemed to have been stimulated by something. Suddenly, stormy waves surged as if they wanted to drown the beam of light. The powerful energy contained in the underworld river could even erase the Dao seals in the heavenly court. But now, the torrential river water could not devour the beam of light. However, under the obstruction of the huge waves, the speed of the beam of light was greatly reduced. This allowed Wu Dao's original body to temporarily escape from danger. As Wu Dao's original body's martial soul continued to go deeper into the underworld river, the fear that came from the depths of the underworld river became stronger and stronger. In front of him, between the sky and the water, Wu Dao's original body saw the ball of fire from before again. However, this time, beside the fire, he did not see the dilapidated ancient ship. The last time he saw the dilapidated ancient ship, it was floating on the surface of the river in the distance, motionless. At that time he was still a little confused. The underworld river flowed continuously and there were 4 paths. Why did this strange dilapidated ship stop in the same place and not flow downstream? But this time, the dilapidated ancient ship had disappeared. Wu Dao's original body did not have the energy to think too much. The danger behind him had not been resolved. Crossing the underworld river, even if he had a physical body at his peak state, would consume a lot of energy and be very dangerous. Now he only had one martial soul left. He had just gone through a great battle and was extremely weak. He had fled all the way here and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He did not dare to approach the ball of fire at all. Even the slightest injury could cause his martial soul to be completely extinguished. As time passed, the flame of Wu Dao's original body's martial soul became weaker and dimmer. His consciousness started to become blurry. Only a little bit of will and instinct remained, and he continued to flee forward. After an unknown period of time, Wu Dao's original body suddenly felt a monstrous resentment and anger rushing towards him, almost suffocating him. He subconsciously stopped and maintained his last bit of consciousness as he looked over. What he saw shocked him greatly. The flame of his martial soul flickered and was almost extinguished. Below him, the underworld river was still flowing continuously. However, right in front of him was a boundless sea of blood. The smell of blood soared into the sky. Back then, when he saw the ball of fire, he had noticed that the surface of the river near the ball of fire was completely red. At first, he thought that it was the reflection of the fire that made it look like this. Only now did he realize that there was a sea of blood in front of him. What was even more terrifying was that the unwillingness, anger, and resentment that flowed out of this sea of blood seemed familiar. It was extremely similar to the emotions in the drop of blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror. Wu Dao's main body suddenly thought of a possibility. Perhaps the drop of blood in the Netherworld treasure mirror came from this sea of blood before him. Just a single drop of blood was already so powerful. What kind of terrifying power was hidden in this boundless sea of blood? How was this sea of blood formed? Wu Dao's original body had once drifted down the river Styx for over 100 years, passing through 4 different underworlds before finally returning to the starting point. In other words, the existence of the Nether River was like a flowing river without a true source. At that time, Wu Dao's original body was somewhat puzzled. If that was the case, what was in the center of the Nether River? Since there was no source, where did the power of the Nether River come from? At this moment, it seemed that everything had an answer. In this short delay, the brilliance behind him had broken through the obstruction of the Nether River and was getting closer and closer. Even the Nether River could not stop this brilliance. As for the boundless sea of blood in front of him, everything was unknown. Wu Dao's original body could feel that this sea of blood contained an extremely terrifying power that was far more powerful than the Nether River. If his extremely weak martial soul were to run into the blood sea, it would most likely be extinguished on the spot by the blood chi. His body and Dao would vanish. Wu Dao's original body looked back. He had no way out. Wu Dao's original body no longer hesitated and drifted toward the sea of blood in front of him. Whoosh! As soon as he arrived above the sea of blood, endless blood surged over and enveloped his martial soul. A series of sizzling sounds could be heard. His martial soul flickered continuously and the flame became smaller and smaller. It did not last long before it was completely extinguished. The soul of Wu Dao's original body fell into the sea of blood and his consciousness continued to sink. He realized that Wu Dao's original body was finished. His soul was destroyed. However, when his consciousness finally disappeared, he suddenly thought of something. Since the sea of blood in front of him was calm and without waves, why did the dilapidated ancient ship from back then disappear? He did not have the chance to think of the final answer before he lost consciousness. The brilliance from the greater world broke through layers of huge waves of the Nether River and chased close to the sea of blood. However, it suddenly stopped. The brilliance seemed to have become a little confused and could not find its target. It patrolled around but still found nothing. Under the continuous erosion of the Nether River and the sea of blood, the brilliance became dimmer and dimmer. Finally, it dissipated and merged into the sea of blood. What? At this moment, the sound of water could be heard. Ripples suddenly appeared in the originally calm sea of blood. A pitch-black and extremely simple dilapidated ancient ship broke through the surface of the sea from the depths of the blood mist and sailed over slowly. When it arrived at the place where the martial soul of Wu Dao's original body was extinguished, the dilapidated ancient ship suddenly stopped. Immediately after, a figure stood up slowly from the pitch-black ship. The figure curled up and squatted in the sunken hull of the ship, almost fusing with the dilapidated ancient ship. If it did not move, it would be almost impossible to distinguish. The figure wore a wide black robe and had disheveled hair. His sparse black hair covered his entire face and one could vaguely see his pale skin. However, one could not see his exact appearance and could not tell if he was a human or a ghost. The figure glanced sideways and looked at the soul of Wu Dao's original body in the sea of blood. Hee hee, a strange laughter sounded from the head of black hair. All of a sudden, the black-robed figure waved casually and his wide sleeves fell into the sea of blood. He scooped up the soul of Wu Dao's original body and placed it gently on the ancient ship. Then, the black-robed figure hooked his finger at the flame, floating in the sea of blood. A wisp of scarlet flame floated out and landed on the soul of Wu Dao's original body. Whoosh! The martial spirit flame that had been extinguished was ignited once again. Although it was still very weak, the soul of Wu Dao's original body was gradually regaining its vitality. The black-robed figure turned around. His black hair covered his face and his faintly discernible gaze fell on Wu Dao's original body through his sparse black hair. He seemed to be staring at him. His gaze was a little strange and indescribable. After a long while, the black-robed figure withdrew his gaze. He did not do anything, but the dilapidated ancient ship under him swayed and moved. It carried Wu Dao's original body into the depths of the sea of blood and gradually disappeared into the vast blood mist. The Nether River also returned to its calm state as if nothing had happened. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.